Welcome to Boulder. Welcome to Boulder City Council. Appreciate everybody being here, and some of them looking so good in their white shirts. Thank you for being here. We will call the meeting to order. Confirmation of posting and roll call.
Thank you. The agenda was posted in accordance with Nevada open meeting law, and all members are present.
Thank you. We will have our invocation. We'll all arise for the invocation by Service Clergy Mark Wells from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Mr. Wells, please.
Our gracious Heavenly Father, we are grateful this day for the opportunity we have to assemble together in this community. We are grateful, especially this year, for the country that we live in, for the sacrifices of many that have made it possible to meet together today, for the freedoms that we enjoy of speech and religion and the ability to meet together. We are grateful for those who serve in leadership capacities here in our local city, nation, and our state, as well as those who perform the functions of staff in carrying out the activities and administrative duties of our government. We give thee thanks again for our lives and our health, our safety. We're mindful of those who are in need, and we pray for them. We pray for our leaders that they will continue to lead with diligence and with compassion, competency, and seek inspiration from thee. On behalf of all of our residents in this wonderful, beautiful city, now we pray for these things humbly and give thee thanks for all that we enjoy. In the name of Jesus Christ, our Savior. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. You could remain standing while we have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In the way of announcements, we would like to recognize our police volunteers for volunteering their time with Boulder City Police Department's, quote, "You Are Not Alone," unquote, program, which is a free service in partnership with the Senior Center that allows older adults to have comfort and security in the knowledge that someone is checking in on them on a regular basis. Sherry Anderson is probably here. We would like to recognize you and particularly the other volunteers, and we will go down and get a photo with everybody and pass out the certificates to Bruce Lennon and Brad Erlinson and Lonnie Munson and Nick Silla and Bob Facconi and Harry Bennell and Monica Chavez. So we will go down, have opportunity to have a photo. And you'll be able to come up, please.
is everybody ready? Thank you. Oh, okay, we can do that.
Way back in the day.
My alarm going off down here? It was Cheryl.
On a sadder note, we will have a memorial service at 9:20 on Monday at the Veterans Cemetery for Blake Fennevis, active duty Marine who died recently. That will be at 9:20 at the Veterans Cemetery this Monday. Any other announcements? Seeing none.
Mayor, I do have a public announcement if I can.
Mhm.
I've been asked to share some information about the Ray of Hope Foundation, local family here in Boulder City that started it. The Ray of Hope Foundation helps families navigating ongoing medical care, financial strain, and travel for specialized treatments. They offer financial support for medical equipment, holiday assistance, and wish-giving initiatives. And it's founded by parents who experience the isolation and challenges of rare medical diagnoses in their family firsthand. And the Ray of Hope Foundation is a nonprofit organization dedicated to spreading hope and changing lives. And more information can be found at Ray of Hope Foundation, RAE, named after their daughter, rayofhopefoundation.org. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other announcements? Seeing none, we will open public comment at this time, recognizing that public comment for this portion of the agenda is anything related to the agenda. If it is not on the agenda, then we would invite you to come up at public comment at the end. So, seeing that, if you could identify yourself and state what portion of the agenda you are going to address.
Good morning, esteemed leaders, council members, Mayor. Eric King, longtime resident in the area. Wanted to speak on a couple of items. One is item 8, which is a community development block grant. And though I don't know all the details of what may or may not be earmarked there, I wanted to advocate for consideration for stormwater usage to grow more trees when you develop said properties to be developed, and use these monies to help do that. I don't know how much conversations have been had so far, or maybe may well be had going forward, but I fervently believe that well-informed decision makers that can utilize all their resources to the best advantage for the community results in a better community. And that involves trees and what rain does fall here, which is more than in the valley. And I'm seeing a lot of pines in particular really vulnerable and needle drops. So hopefully a community development grant could be more tenuous to that.
So what we will address is those things that will benefit the elderly according to what that money is designated for already in the block grant.
And I can promise you that more trees cooling the environment and providing more shade will be less stress on the elderly.
Thank you.
I'm 100% sure of that, Mayor, with respect. I'd also like to address, I believe it's item number 11, if I got it right here. I'm sorry, well, whichever one it was, I saw it on here, the airport improvement I just had it here, sorry. The airport improvement, I think it was a grant, Aviation Administration Airport Improvement Program, which is item 9C, forgive me. And I also wanted to say, in particular with stormwater runoff, which is a huge issue with high velocity, massive amounts on all the hardscape that airports entail. That is a huge resource that could be directed in more fundamentally effective ways for trees to be growing there, not only beautifying the area without additional cost, because things like mesquite trees that, once they get established, have the ample water table that you have available here for usage for them without city water. So basically zero cost trees, cooling pavements that are there for people to come and go, have less stress, more beauty, more clean air. And those are all opportunities that are massively scaled up with airport runoff waters. So thank you for hearing me on that. I wish it was a Hollywood sign size message that you hear me on that, because that is massive amounts of water that not only require very expensive concrete channeling and basin engagement, but channeling it into the ground and hydrating that area for those trees means they're all healthier and better. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else like to come forward in public comment?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Adam Schulteis, and I want to let you know that Boulder City has a consultant problem. Tonight, you are being asked to approve another $288,177 consulting contract with Lisa Wise Consulting. At the same time, the city hired FCS Group to study our utility rates, and now residents are facing proposed increases of up to 5% a year for 3 years. My question is simple. Why do we keep paying outside consultants to do work that taxpayers and ratepayers already pay city staff and voluntary advisory committees to help perform? We have professional staff, we have department heads, and we have a utility advisory committee specifically created to advise this council about utility finances and rates. Yet we hire another consultant. Then the consultant recommends higher rates, and who pays? The people of Boulder City. This isn't about whether consultants are ever necessary. Of course they are. This is about a city government that seems far too comfortable reaching for the taxpayers and ratepayers' checkbook instead of first asking, can we do this ourselves? Before you approve another $288,177 contract, tell the public, why is this consultant necessary? Why can't our existing staff do more of this work? And exactly how much has Boulder City spent on outside consultants over the last 2 years? And what fund is it coming out of? Who's paying for it? Because $50,000 here, $100,000 there, and $288,000 somewhere else adds up to real money. Boulder City residents are being asked to tighten their belts while their utility rates might go up. Maybe it's time City Hall tighten its belts too. Stop automatically outsourcing the work of government. Spend our money like it was your own. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
I'm Carol Schulteis. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight, residents are being asked to accept a 5% increase in electric rates every year for 3 years. Compounded, that is approximately 15.8% by the 3rd year. Water and wastewater rates would also increase by 5% annually. The city says the additional electric revenue is needed for our aging distribution system. I understand that reliable utilities must be maintained, but residents deserve a complete financial picture before being committed to 3 years of automatic increases. More than 30 data center facilities are already operating across Clark County. NV Energy has also reported 39 prospective data center customers requesting approximately 16.5 megawatts of new capacity currently right now. Those 39 are not operating facilities, but they demonstrate the extraordinary level of future demand being proposed for the Southern Nevada grid. Boulder City residents must also understand that the city appeal of BLM data center decision and the November's transfer area ballot question are two separate matters that involve the electrical grid. The BLM appeal concerns a data center on federal land. Question 1 concerns opening city-controlled land inside the transfer area to data center development. Appealing one federal decision does not prevent the city from approving data centers on city land if question 1 passes. And it should, because our appeal was brilliant, and it included every reason that our citizens have given you that we don't want data centers. A few months ago, the city approved 3 large battery energy storing projects involving land in the transfer area. Primergy at 500 megawatts, REV Renewables at 250 megawatts, and Ion Energy at 200 megawatts. These BESS projects, not data centers, but before the election, residents deserve to know whether any of these leases, options, or land arrangements could later be amended, assigned, expanded, or replaced to accommodate data centers. One of our council members asked Primergy, whose BESS application was notably short-term, whether they were planning to build a data center. She replied, "Not at this time," and then corrected herself to say, "We're a standalone battery energy storage facility." Her oops was very telling. Meanwhile, residents see the city considering assuming costly obligations, including a new fire facility and staffing, expanded recreation operations, and other capital projects, while simultaneously asking households to pay higher utility rates.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come forward in public comment on anything related to the agenda?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, ladies and gentlemen. Brandon Smith for the record. Just going to chat a little bit about item number 11 on tonight's agenda. First, I'd like to just kind of follow up with what Adam said. I agree with what he had to say in regards to outside consulting. Seems like we spend an awful lot of money on that. Directly in relation to item number 11 and the proposed increase to utilities basically across the board. I've kind of focused on the water because that's our big issue in front of everybody right now. Nevada's just had its allocation cut. My concern is that we seem to do things pretty differently from Las Vegas, maybe even Henderson, in that our rates, their rates actually start lower and then exponentially increase for every new tier that their residents surpass in regards to water usage, which basically encourages as much conservation as humanly possible. Our tiers are not staggered in the same way as those cities, and basically our tiers are staggered to a very minimal level. So somebody using, say, over 60 megagallons a month isn't paying that substantially much more than somebody using only 8 megagallons. It seems that our bigger users should have to pay more, because if they're not, you're not really, you're just charging them a little more, but you know, the people that have the money don't really care too much. And I think the realistically and exponentially staggered tiers would encourage conservation much more than the current system does. I think while it would be great that that the lower user households, you know, the 2 people that are living in a condo somewhere and aren't necessarily using a whole lot of water, aren't subsidizing the households that have 8 people living them in a, you know, acre home or whatever they have. And you're just asking the little people to kind of subsidize the bigger people or the bigger households. And I think that's drastically unfair. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come forward?
Travis Chandler, been a resident since 92, something like that. I've looked at my water bill over the years. One thing I did, planted trees. I was encouraged to do that by the city. If you plant trees, this, it uses, what is Boulder City's allocation of Colorado River water was what? Something like 330,000 gallons. Doesn't sound like a lot when you think about it. My take on it is it's worth it, using the water to plant trees. They help cool the outdoors and, for that matter, the house itself by the trees. They cast shadows and shade on the house. That helps. I have a small swimming pool. I calculated, measured, in fact, 5,700 gallons of water. During the winter, I just drain it. Gets kind of green and funky, and I don't want to be spending a lot of money on chlorine. And the water's just too cold then. But in the summer, it's wonderful to have, get some outdoor. Not that much, 5,700 for one pool to fill it all. During the course of a month, might be a few hundred gallons. It evaporates, okay? If anybody knows the numbers that I just referred to a little bit ago about how much the city's allocation of water, we have so much of the Colorado River water for the rest of Nevada, including a lot of Clark County. I don't know if that's true or not, if they get their water from Lake Mead or not, or for that matter, Boulder City. I do know we get usage from the Hoover Dam. They have a special turbine just for Boulder City's electric need, quite a bit smaller than the 6 or 8 turbines for that water too. Anyway, my thoughts are that the usage of the water, we weren't really using very much there. We had a certain amount allocated to us, but didn't do much. I think it's a good thing though. Cool your houses, cool your yards, just plant a tree and that'll put shade on your house. I put 2 trees in the front of my yard by the street, and they cast about done here. That last bit put shade on my cars that are parked on the street. So lots and lots of ways I think there is to use the water. such as trees.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome anyone else who would like to come forward in public comment regarding anything on the agenda. Seeing none, we will close public comment and move to the approval of the regular agenda. Do I have a motion?
Mayor and council,
Mhm.
staff has a request to move item number 9 to be considered after item number 13, please.
Okay. It's the motion to include in the regular agenda with that motion to move 9 after 13.
I move to approve the regular agenda, moving number 9 after 13, please.
And I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. And that brings us to the approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. That brings us to our regular agenda, and we will go to, we're skipping number 9 for the moment and going to number 10.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Boulder City residents. I'm Julie Calloway, your Parks and Recreation Director. And tonight, I'm here to let you know a little bit about agenda item number 10, which is related to our toddlers in Boulder City and a generous grant of $2,500 from our longtime partners, the Southern Nevada chapter of International Code Council, who's providing us with that $2,500 grant so that we can provide free swim lessons to Boulder City toddlers. I'd like to introduce Benny Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Hello, my name is Benny Gonzalez. I'm a chairperson for the Public Outreach Committee in this Committee for the Southern Nevada chapter of the International Code Council. Our chapter is dedicated to public safety in the built environment. One of many ways our chapter supports the Southern Nevada community through our Public Outreach Committee is through our Toddler Swim Grant Program. Currently, every year, the program gives a total of $25,000 in grant money in 9 cities, and the Southern Nevada Child Drowning Prevention Coalition to prevent childhood drownings through free swim lessons, pool safety, and education. Every year, almost 500 children under the age of 4, school-age kids, and families benefit from our Toddler Swim Grant Program. Our chapter would like to commend the City of Boulder City Parks and Recreation Department for the dedication and their efforts providing water safety awareness and prevention to our community. On behalf of the Southern Nevada chapter of the International Code Council, we would like to present you with a check in the amount of $2,500.
You want to come up and say something?
Yes, I was hoping that we might have a motion and approval for the resolution, and then we'd love a photo op.
So you don't want to say anything derogatory about?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so I need a motion.
I'll second that motion.
So we have a motion and second to approve the resolution 8192. Any discussion?
Just a little bit. Just a deep sense of gratitude for continually coming back to Boulder City to offer our youngest little residents the opportunity to learn to swim. It's big. And when I was a young girl, I babysat a family who lost a daughter to drowning that was a toddler. And the effect that that has on a family is, you can't calculate that. So thank you so very much for this opportunity here in Boulder City. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Mayor, you know, the International Code Council, it covers all codes, right? Codes, building code, uniform building code, electrical code, the swimming pool, construction codes and safety codes as well. And we know that local chapter is very interested in the safety of specifically our communities. And we have local adoption of specific codes for Clark County that we appreciate the ICC local chapter working on to help advise for those modifications as necessary. And particularly for this, thank you. Yeah, it's a big deal, and we appreciate that Parks and Rec has the capacity to be able to take those funds and teach those lessons to our youth. Thank you.
Mayor, if I may, Julie, can you just tell us how a family could sign up?
Absolutely. You can register for any of our toddler swim classes at the pool. You can give them a call. You just need to have an account, which most Boulder City residents already participate in some of our programs, so they already have that. And just register for classes. As long as the pool is open before we close for construction of our new facility, we will be offering swim lessons.
Thank you. I too taught my children, they're older now, but when they were infants, how to swim, because there's no reason that a child should drown. And whenever we could provide, one of the gentlemen talked about how we spend money in the city, this is a good way to use that grant, so thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you. Anyone else? So where are we at? We've had a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. I think we need a picture with a check. Did you bring the check? Okay.
I've got two cameras, all right? So are you ready? 1, 2, 3, and... yeah. 1, 2. Thank you. Yeah.
You want my jacket?
I was going to tell you, Denise, I taught swimming lessons to little kids for 1 year. For years, because the little infants luckily, I didn't have to go through that.
That brings us to item number 11, for possible action on the 2026 utility rate study. Mr. Poindexter.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight we're bringing you the results of the utility rate study along with some context from staff on why this work matters right now. Presenting for FCS Group, a Bowman company, are Angie Hamrick, project manager on the study, Paul Quinn, assistant project manager, and Angie Verdosh, principal. They've spent the past year working throughout our electric, water, and wastewater systems, and they'll walk you through the revenue requirements and cost of service results. We're also joined by George Kahn, who has been advising us on this effort, and with me is Shannon Ryman, our Public Works and Utilities analyst, who will be starting our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
The red button, okay. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and to our residents. My name is Shannon Ryman. I'm the Public Works Utilities Analyst, and I wanted to start with a brief history of our rates increases for Boulder City. Since 2016, the city has conducted a rate study to evaluate capital needs and cost of service and implemented modest rate increases ranging from 2 to 4% year to year to meet city obligations to maintain infrastructure, sustain reliability of electric, water, and wastewater services. In 2025, the city engaged a new company, FCS, to evaluate the current rates. Due to the capital projects necessary to modernize aging infrastructure and the raising costs for electricity, FCS originally recommended or found about a 9.5% increase for 3 years to meet our obligations just for electric. The city engaged in value engineering to reduce the impact to our residents and businesses by prioritizing and deferring some capital projects and utilizing specialized funds and interfund loans to meet current capital needs. That leads us into enterprise funds. Many cities operate water and wastewater utilities, but Boulder City, we also operate our own electric utility. And as noted on the slides, enterprise funds are funded separately from the other city operations and are funded by user fees rather than taxes. Enterprise funds are designed to be completely self-sufficient, meaning users' fees pay for all the cost for purchasing resources like our electric and water, our distribution infrastructure, and administrative cost. Okay. So the city does pay for all resources that are distributed to our customers. The city does not receive any electric or water for free. The slides show the diversity of our power portfolio, associated cost, as well as the water delivery and infrastructure costs from the SNWA. You'll see that represented in those pie charts. So now that I've gone over that, what we pay for our resources and the funds that it comes from, I'm going to hand the presentation over to Gary so he can discuss the poles, wires, pipes, and pumps that brings power and water to our residents.
Before you leave, we may have a
Oh,
question.
yes.
I have a question. You did say something about free.
It's not free.
It's not free?
Not free.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mayor, if I could, I appreciate the fact that you addressed, the NRS regulation for enterprise funds, right? And you explained that well. I think those other three boxes there are really important, and if you would just touch on those
Oh, sure.
briefly, please. This really is the foundation of the whole conversation here,
Yeah.
right? And so if you could elaborate on those succinctly, please, that would help us as we continue on the conversation.
Right. So the most important are ratepayers. That's how we fund these enterprise funds. We don't receive taxes to fund these. So our electric, water, and wastewater, they don't receive property tax. There's no sales tax that go into it. Every dollar that is paid by utility rates is what's used towards maintaining the system infrastructure and the purchases of our resources.
Okay, that's one. Let's go to the next
Okay,
box.
so number 2, we do have electric, water, and wastewater utility. As I said, we're special and have our electric utility as well. However, they're not 3 separate enterprise funds. It is one fund, but just for the sake of transparency is the reason that we like to keep them delineated by electric, water, and wastewater. So, but all in all, it is just one enterprise fund. Now, for the borrowing rules for that the third square up there, as it says, the money loaned out of the enterprise fund is where the NRS comes into, but these aren't going out of the enterprise fund as they are one, so it's interfund is how I believe that's important.
So water and electric could share some funds, but it's got to go back to where it came from initially. That's what you're saying on this box, right? If water shares money with electric, water has to pay that back to electric, right?
The law is really for funds outside of the enterprise fund. So the funds within the enterprise fund are not obligated by law to pay one another back.
Okay.
But I think the reason why we put it there is for the bottom box there, which shows the city's debt limitation obligation, and that we can't bond for over $1 million without voter approval. And so this just highlights the restrictions that having an enterprise fund, one has in that any loans out of it must be repaid. And then number two, if there were a large capital need, in order to meet that need, we would not be able to bond for it without voter approval, which is why it's important to maintain reserves and things like that.
Thank you, and I think that's a really important distinction. Our neighbors often will just take out bonds and service the bonds with the income therefore, and pay as you go for 30 years or 50 years or however long that bond happens to be. We don't have that luxury. We're not bonding. We don't have the ability without going to a vote, and if we need a transformer changed, to wait for the next election cycle just isn't going to serve our customers. Therefore, these reserves are crucial for our utility funds here, and we have several sections in our financial management ordinance that dictates the amount that we need to have in our reserves, right? And so as we talk about this, we'll be talking about the reserves required to be responsive to those infrastructure needs.
Yes, and I think we'll see that definitely as we dive more into our presentation
Okay.
here.
Thanks, Shannon, I appreciate
Thank you
that.
so much. All right, well, is there any more questions?
Well, I'm gonna ask the obvious question, how do we stack up with, comparing us with other entities?
There is a slide a little bit later on that will answer that question for you,
All right.
Mayor.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, with that, I'm going to pass it over to Gary so he can start talking about our infrastructure.
All right, so we added some slides in here to give a little explanation of the infrastructure. Went more into the electric side of it, but I can go into the water and wastewater a little bit more, but on the slides, it is the electric. So we have our 6 substations, anywhere from back in the 1950s is Substation 1, which is located at our city maintenance yard. We also have Substation 2, which is 1990s, anywhere 70s, 80s, 90s, and late 90s. So part of that is your substation is about a 40 to 50 year. Plus, our older system is a 4 kV. We need to switch to a 12 kV. 4 kV is more lower level, 12 kV is going to be more reliable, higher level for us. So it is part of something we're trying to switch to. We are going to sub 3 right now, is in a remodel in design. So we plan on, once we get that built, we'll be looking at tying in some feeder projects along with removing some of the 4 kV substations and rebuilding one other. Next slide just shows some of our UGMs, our power poles. So we have 798 UGMs, 1,495 wooden poles out there. They last only so long, so we've been replacing them. It's all part of the infrastructure upgrades. You have Substation 3, some of these kind of give you a little breakdown of what I already talked about. This is in design right now. This is located at River Mountain and Adams. So by next year, we'll be having a new substation being built. And that is funded right now. This goes one of our oldest substations, is from 1990s with the transformers, with 50s, the breakers and everything. They still work, but sooner or later they're not going to. And we can't get parts because when you're looking, there are companies that salvage these and they have warehouses. So you call them up and you're looking for a certain fuse or something, we might get lucky and we're going to pay for it. So, yes.
So you said they still work. What's the hazard of leaving it there and then it going down? What does that look like for the city?
So part of what we have on some of the CIP projects is the feeder and the tie-ins. So if a substation does go down, most cases, and we do have 3 projects on the CIP, but in most cases we can pick it up from another substation. So in some of these CIP projects, if a substation goes down, we may not be able to pick up a certain area. So that's why some of these projects are very important to loop it for Also reliability, also we have some primary cable that is not large enough to handle what is actually being used. So it's not if, it's when.
What would determine the turnaround time for that? Would be the cost? Would it be manufacturing? What, I mean, obviously, if something catches us by surprise, there's got to be some kind of turnaround time.
It is, we keep cable in stock. So it'd be the matter of pulling that cable. A lot of times we'll have an outage and we have a failed cable, and whether or not we can pull the failed out of the conduit, or we have to run above ground and trench. So
What if a full, is it I wish I could say more.
transformer for a
yes, thank you, went
at a
out.
substation went out, we'd be picking it up, doing what we can to get it onto another substation, because those transformers are, they're out quite a ways. And I could tell you maybe a year. Sometimes they surprise, I think the last time we ordered, it was supposed to be a year, and they surprised us in 6 months.
Okay,
So-
so the turnaround time for it is a long time.
Yeah.
And the cost for it,
Correct.
more than $1 million?
The last one we bought, yes, yeah.
Okay.
Gary, I had a quick question for you. So in layman's terms, what happens when the substation goes down? How do we feel that as a resident? We
So-
get brown out?
Yeah, well, a lot of times what will happen is it will transfer over to another substation. Or our staff, when they come in, they'll open some phases and they'll be able to pick it up in another substation. You'll start seeing when there's a large outage, all of a sudden, say we got 2,000 homes out, and within an hour, we might have half of them back on because we were able to pick them up in another circuit or another sub.
So that happened, what, 2 weeks ago?
Mhm.
On the Girl Streets, where they were out and it was like maybe 5 minutes, but
Yeah.
that's,
A lot of times, and you might be at home and all of a sudden it flickers real quick.
yes.
It got picked up, another circuit picked it up.
Okay.
So,
So we're on borrowed time, really.
yeah,
Because
it's,
this is 1970, I think you said it was?
yeah, and you're at about 40 to 50 year lifespan on a substation, so.
Okay, thank you.
Gary, what would it take to be out, like for a couple of hours? Or I know on the Girl Streets, we had one that was out for almost 24 hours.
I worked that night.
You worked that night?
That was the first time I've been up over 24 hours in a long time. I paid for that for a few
Could you
days.
share with us how that happened and why that happened and how this is going to prevent that from happening?
So, yeah, that ended up being a transformer over on, over off of Jerry, and not Stacy, but the next one over. And lived here that long, and I just lost the name on it. And a failed, which caused another failed cable over on Georgia. So it was one thing, a domino effect caused another, and it was the way the system, being as old as it is, we start putting fault locators in throughout the town. The problem is you have to search for it. So it's a needle in a haystack. So unless somebody calls, say we have an outage, and somebody calls going, hey, I heard this explosion over here, all of a sudden we can really dial in to going, hey, it's in this vicinity. The problem is, in that case, we didn't know where exactly it started. So we worked from Georgia over to Christine, over to the Girl Streets, and that's when we found on Ramona that there was a transformer. And so we ended up having a cable over on Georgia and a transformer on Ramona. And it was just a matter of is finding it. I think at the same time we had Del Prado went out. Around the same time, we had another outage up there, so.
Yeah, you mentioned something like you're putting something in the line so you can catch that faster when.
There's a fault indicator. It goes inside the cabinet, so we've been putting those in. That's part of our improvements so they'll be able to open it up and see if it tripped, then they know they're in the right area.
And where are these cabinets at?
These are your transformers or inside the UGMs that are located, as you're out walking sidewalks, you'll see the metal lids that say electric on them. You also have other communication companies that have vaults too, but ours will say electric.
Thank you.
Huh?
Anything else? Okay, continue on.
All right, so I'll go back to, let's see. So this goes into our electric, the different CIP projects we have. I mentioned a few of these already. Substation 3 rebuild, we're in design right now, almost at 90%. We're working with CRC closely on that. Circuit 45, 61, 62, and then the other circuit 63. And then you'll see those are in 27. And the tie for 14 to 24 and 28. Those are all reliability, switching, like you mentioned, if we had to switch from subs. So when the line size upgrades, so those are what those projects are all about. And then the substation 1 to substation 4 feeders is when we do go over the 12 kV, that is your, so we can remove substation 1 from the system. And then as we go down, substation 4 rebuild is going to be rebuilding that from a 4 kV to a 12 kV. We're not going to tear it down, we're going to rebuild it. So, and then, of course, our bucket trucks. And then our distribution upgrades and meter replacement, that includes all of our changing out poles, pole transformers, the regular transformers. We have UGMs, you'll see how to walk in and some of the lids, they'll go bad after a while. So that's all part of the infrastructure we have to replace. And then the transmission switches, there's 4 of them. You'll see we have a transmission line up Buchanan, large poles, and then down Adams. So there's 4 transmission switches throughout the town, so. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't click, 2 things. So that's your electric, and then your water and wastewater, capital projects. So I didn't include any pictures. However, so we have the 14-inch lines, solar field, PRVs. There's really high pressure down that way. So adding those PRVs, we're in design on that. The Adams Boulevard potable main extension is going to be for the new substation for a fire hydrant. So the pressure reducing valves around town, the PRVs and backflows, give you an idea. We got about 3,200 valves out there, street valves, isolate our system. I got 786 feet of potable main line. Sewer, got 450,000 feet of sewer main line. And a lot of this, I mean, you look up on Cherry and Birch and Ash, and those are all from when that area was built. It's all clay pipe. So it's all part of a very important for us to continue putting money into our infrastructure. And from there, I'm going to pass any questions for me? Sorry.
Are those clay pipes, are they out in the street also?
They're-
I know they come through the yards, and so there's always a problem with the roots, but are they out in the street, the clay pipes also?
Yeah, correct. On the main line up on Ash, Birch, Cherry, some of the tree streets, they are.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we have to replace that. Okay, thank you.
We wouldn't, and I wouldn't replace it. We would actually line it.
Oh,
So there is other ways to not have to trench, dig up the entire street. More a little cost effective is to line the clay pipes.
and how long does that last? Does that last?
100 years.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's what they claim. I haven't been around to see.
Yeah,
So-
I know, I hear you. Thank you.
You got it. Thank you. All right. Let me get out of your way, Angie. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, hello. Angie Hamrick with FCS. I'm joined with Angie Vanash and Paul Quinn for this part of the presentation. And so I'm going to start with why a rate study. There we go. Why a rate study. So when we talk about that, just enabling the utility to be self-sufficient, you want to see and understand the fees need to be generated to cover the costs for that utility on its own. It informs financial decisions and their impact. You want to develop that capital plan that is specific to that utility, and then you can evaluate the needs for external funding. You're looking at equitable cost recovery for customers. You know that each class has a different demand on the system, and so you want to develop that plan. And then it's a living plan set that can achieve a long-term planning objectives. And so FCS was retained to complete this utility rate study, and we've done about over 3,000 of these similar to this one. I just want to say that we're grateful to the city staff as well for their help, especially for the data that they were provided to produce this study. It was definitely a team effort. But as we move through, the utility rate study itself is a multi-year financial plan providing a forward look at each system's needs. And for the water and the electric systems, we also did the cost of service analysis, and we looked at rate design considerations. So our focus for today is really taking a look at the overall rate study, the revenue requirements for each system, the cost of service analysis results for water and electric, and then we're going to move into fiscal year 28 rate design considerations for water and electric as well. So overall, the rate setting process, you start with step one, the revenue requirement. What is my overall need, my overall revenue need? Step two is moving into cost of service. It's looking at that equity evaluation, looking at each class because they have a different demand on the system. And then three, rate design, designing the rates. What is the structure of the rates to collect that target revenue? And continuing on with a deeper dive into revenue requirements, it's a multi-year financial plan. So it looks at the revenue necessary to meet all the obligations. Okay, what are your operating costs? What are your capital expenditures? What's your debt service? What are those fiscal policies that you have to meet year over year? From there, it's looking at your capital funding plan and your capital needs, identifying those capital needs, maintaining ongoing system reliability, sustainability, potentially internal, external funding sources, and then rate stability. And then it evaluates sufficiency of current rates on a standalone basis. Again, we're kind of going back to that self-sufficient. We're looking at each individual utility on its own. And then from there, crafting an annual rate implementation strategy. There's another look at revenue requirement, kind of more of a visual. You look at your financial policies. You look at what you're forecasting for O&M costs. What is your rate funded capital for that particular utility? What are your existing and potentially new debt service? And all of that wrapped together becomes that annual revenue need. And from there, I'm going to jump into wastewater unless there's any questions. For each of the systems, we had similar assumptions, although they're a little bit different for each. We started, obviously, all of the forecast basis was the same, 2026 to 2035. The reserve targets, we held 90 days of cash as on the operating expenses and then 2% of fixed assets. Those were the same across each system for those metrics. Customer growth was held at 0.26%. That's about 17 new services. Annual revenue was right about $2.5 million in 2026. We looked at operating expense, it was based on 2026 budget. We utilized inflationary factors ranging from 3.25 to 5%. 5% example was how we forecasted labor forward. For wastewater, there was no existing debt. And for the capital plan from 2026 to 2035, it was right at $21.6 million in current dollars or 24.7 in escalated dollars.
I have a question on that slide. On the customer growth, did you factor in Track 350 and the homes that will be built there in the next couple of years?
I don't believe that we did. I'm going to ask for. With the 26.
And then we ended, yeah, it was
Okay.
26, but we ended up spreading it out.
That's right, of the allotments. Yeah, we took an overall average to include that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so moving on to the wastewater revenue requirement. I'd like to just take a minute kind of to orient you to the chart and walk through each kind of component. So the dark blue is the cash operating expenses, that's that bottom part of the chart. And then on top of that is the yellow, which is the rate funded capital. And as we see that dark black line that is trending down through the yellow towards the blue, that's your revenue at existing rates for the wastewater system. So if there are no increases, and if it's left without those increases, your trend would be down, and you would start to not be able to fund in the capital needs and then moving towards the operating costs. So the gray dotted line are your targets for the year. But you can see the black dotted line then shows the 5% increases through 2031 and then 3% from 2032 on, that then goes above and meets those needs at those levels. I also want to talk about the gray in the background, which is the fund balance that is also being utilized to come down and help with capital projects. Between 29 and 30, there's about 9 million in costs, and so you're going into your fund balance to help fund those projects, and then you're slowly building those funds back up. So it's a combination of all of those together to meet this plan.
Mayor, if I could you explain which fund balances we're referring to?
So those that are attributed to wastewater in that enterprise fund, that are the basis where you start with your wastewater fund balance, and that's what we use for the particular study for just wastewater. And then I'll note too that there's just some examples on the bottom. These are.
I was gonna ask you that. I was gonna ask you about that. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, going back. So there we go. The difference, like if you look at 2026 for a wastewater bill, it's 25.28. A 5% increase takes it to 26.54. And then you can see it goes up to about $1.53 difference by 2031. And then once you go back to the 3%, it's about 97 cents additional per year at that level.
Mayor, may I make a clarifying comment, and correct me if I'm wrong?
Sure, sure.
I think this is a very important slide, and I found it very interesting because that very large gray area between 2026 and 2030 is the reserves that have built up over time. And the city has a backlog of projects that we've identified, and if I understand this correctly, we will be using those reserves to essentially implement those capital projects.
Right.
If we did not have those reserves, the increase would need to be more because we still need to cover those costs, but we have built up a reserve that can cover that. And I just wanted to point that out particularly on this slide because I think it's very important.
Would those costs be the substation? Those bigger items? Which items are you talking about that covers it?
Yeah, this slide is actually for the wastewater projects.
Yeah.
So
So
some of the
which-
sewer projects that Gary mentioned of
Oh, okay.
replacing the clay pipes,
I
et
think,
cetera.
yeah, and they were totaling upwards of like 16 million.
Yeah, and the other large ticket items are the two lift stations, I
Okay,
believe, are
that's
in
what
our
I
capital
wanted to
improvement program. And
identify.
without those, we would be in trouble on projects.
So the figures that were down at the bottom, is that what the increase would be projected
For a residential,
for the
yes.
wastewater?
If I could continue on that point that the city manager was making. And so you mentioned that gray dashed line that's within the blue operational area. Those are our target reserves. So as we spend the current reserves, will these target reserves then build that back up to where it is now, or will it maintain that reserve balance at a much lower level as we see projected out from 2031?
So it'll maintain that level at the gray dotted line, and then it'll start to build above that. So that's kind of your bottom. So we're trying to hold those targets, and then we're starting to build back above it from there. Does that answer your question?
It does. I
Okay.
think it's so important, the city manager pointed this out. You know, it seems like sometimes we do our absolute best to keep things together with duct tape and baling wire. And we get every last ounce of service out of our infrastructure, but there comes a point where the duct tape and baling wire just isn't sufficient any longer, and we have to make investments. And it feels like we're at that point now that we've done all that we can to extend these, to delay the projects, to not do certain projects. We've gotten federal funding, and some of our national representatives have been here to represent the fact that they got this for us, and we've been able to do upgrades at our wastewater treatment facility because of some of that money, and which has preserved our reserves. And we're grateful for that funding, but that's not a bottomless well either. And we need
Right.
to, recognize that these investments are important to be made. Yeah, thanks.
If I may, so if we didn't have our huge gray area of reserves, we would be in big trouble right now.
Much higher increases
I mean,
to
we-
accomplish
yeah.
the capital plan that's needed.
We would have to be doing a whole lot more of implementing or augmenting the proposal that we have today, for instance.
Correct.
And so we're using those reserves appropriately so that we can spread out the need that we have in order to be able to use those so that we don't put people in desperate situations.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Going on to water. Similar assumptions, a little different. Same forecast basis. Reserve targets are held the same levels, are a little bit higher though because of their percentages. Growth is the same, 0.26%. Annual rate revenues run about 10.7 million in 2026. We have those basic same inflationary factors, although there's some other options here with SNWA water purchases. Existing debt is for the Series 2019 utility revenue refunding bond, 2.2 million, and that last payment will come in 2032. Capital plan for water is at 15.7 million, and escalated dollars is 18 million. So we'll take a look at this chart. So we start again with those cash operating funds, expenses, the dark blue. The teal is actually the SNWA water purchases, which is a substantial amount of the water expense. The darker green is your existing debt service, and you can see that that really bumps into any sort of rate-funded capital that you can accomplish through 2031. And I'll take your eyes to the dark black line. As it trends down, you can see that you're not able to meet the debt service, and then it goes right into the SNWA purchases, by 2032, if there are no rate increases. So then with the 5% through 2032, that brings your ability to come up above the debt service and then raise your rate funded capital. The biggest increase there too is because your debt is coming off in 2032. So then you're just rate funding by cash at that point. No existing debt, no proposed debt. Draw your eyes again to the lighter gray behind. And so from there too, we are coming in a little bit as well with water, utilizing those funds and then building them back up from 3.5 on up through 2035.
So
And then-
the theory is it's good to have a reserve.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
And at the,
And
yes, go ahead.
particularly since we have that bonding limitation, right?
Yes.
And I'm sorry if that was going to be your thunder, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No thunder. It's exactly the reason we do have those funds building in there is because you want to offset any kind of emergency. It's really easy to see when a road is aging. And people complain all the time. Have you seen this road? Have you seen that? I mean, I don't know how many people understood Gary when he stood to talk about everything that he just talked about. It's a little harder to understand maybe when your electrical supply chain is aging or your water or what kind of projects need to happen to keep us providing the services that we provide. And utilities for us are multiple. Other municipalities don't have their own electric that they're doing.
It's very true.
So revenue is not just nice, it's vital. I serve on the Clark County Debt Commission. We never take out debt because we cannot. And everyone else, this is how they're surviving. We're mandated to keep surviving with what's coming into the revenue fund, and it has to self-sustain.
Right.
So I know I tried to ask this before, but how do we compare with other municipalities?
Well, I think, and then there is a slide coming, and we have some deeper dives.
That's what I heard. I'm just waiting.
But you're comparable, very comparable. How's that? Told you to that
Okay.
next slide. I'm sorry.
One last question here, at least my last question. Could you
Yes.
remind everybody the debt service, what that's for, please?
That is the refunding, the 2019 refunding bond, the 2.2 million that will drop off in 2032. And the project, I was gonna say, 2030. Yeah, it'll fall off in 2031. You'll have it. Yeah. Right, that's right.
The raw water line,
Yes,
thank you.
thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll just draw your attention to this, the bottom of this slide is just the increases for water with the 5% and then the 3% later on. So $2.02 up to $2.57 in 2032, so.
Go ahead, I just had a quick question just for my own understanding. So at 2032, it looks like it drops off. What would keep that from happening? Would that be like an emergency, or is this is not a guaranteed, it's just a projection, correct?
So the debt itself is dropping off, meaning that you've paid all of your debt, and so it would keep it from happening if you didn't pay your debt. So I think that's what you're asking, right?
Yes, well, there's gonna be an increase on water, that's at the bottom, correct? And at 20, it is going up, never mind, I see it at the bottom. I think the drop off is 2032 to 2033.
Oh, yeah, when it changes from 5% to 3.5, if the rate itself, the increase in is less of an impact in
Because the
2033.
debt is paid off?
Yeah, it helps that we get it to 5% in 2032, we keep it there, but then we're able to come off because the debt has been paid. That was a substantial.
Okay, and the only thing to keep the debt from being paid is some type of emergency,
Right,
obviously?
yeah.
Okay, thank
Something
you,
like
just for
that.
clarification.
My question is this. What happens if our water here, I see it's the blue, what if that triples in price and we don't have enough money to purchase the water towards the end? Do we have to do emergency rate increase? How do we handle that? And I know this for 3 years, but what if something happens next year where our water's tripled?
The cost from SNWA, for instance. So I know it's a contract basis, and I believe that we've built in the contract rates for the next 2 to 3 years. But if something, happens, then that's what you would have to do, is come back and note that they didn't say that the increase was more, and you'd have to come back and increase to cover those costs. Again, you have substantial reserves that, depending on what level that would be, you could potentially ride out that increase. So it'd just have to be an analysis, what makes the most sense at that time.
So do we have a legal and binding contract for the next 3 years for our water rate?
Yes. SNWA.
The rates are set by SNWA. I don't believe we have a contract. We have a board member, and they're updated if there's going to be any rate changes. The wholesale rate, we're paying for the water treatment, we're paying for that. A lot of the capital for SNWA projects is through a different source, so it's my understanding the wholesale rate is just operations costs and treatment costs. So if those were to unanticipatedly go up, but I believe we had forecasts and we provided those to the consultant. But we would have, if they were to go up, we would be briefed at the staff level, and it would go to our board, our SNWA board. And so we have that representation there.
But we don't have a contract.
Well, we have a contract with SNWA, but it's not a set rate in the contract. It's just what is set by the authority. And our membership is, we have a council member as a member, all the member agencies have members.
I think it's important to acknowledge, just like we don't know what we're forecasting costs, right?
Right.
And SNWA as the overseer with all the purveyor members having a seat there, same thing. Their model predominantly, their biggest source of income is from the bigger communities over the hill, right? And growth has been that model. Charges for meters and extending sewer lines and wastewater and septic and so forth. As growth slows down, the SNWA totality, all of us purveyor members, that revenue will likely decrease because of the slowdown in growth. And we know that there is a slowdown forecasted because independent of our issue out here with the BLM, it literally takes an act of Congress to sell land to municipalities. And they're slowing that down. And so the communities over the hill can't gobble up, so to speak, more federal land to build on. And therefore, there's a construction slowdown on the horizon because of that. But the cost to treat, to pump, and to service all the facilities continues to go up just like ours does. So, the board members will see if there ever is a request by the purveyor members to maintain the reserves that we need at that purveyor level to increase the wholesale cost to the purveyor members in total. So we'll see how that comes.
So do we get about a year's heads up on this sort of thing?
Well, there hasn't been a rate increase that I've been involved in, so Gary might be able to better forecast that. I don't know how long that lead time is.
I have not heard anything.
Thank you.
So we have a sample down below of the cost increase. Is this, and as it was pointed out in public comment, there's different structures, right, for the amount used. Is this at the lowest level of water use?
This would be a residential at 5,000, kickoff.
Is that our lowest cost?
It's an average residential, yeah.
Okay. How many tiers do we have in there for usage?
There are 4 for water, 4.
4 tiers. Okay. Thank you.
It's about, for the residential schedule, it's based on the per 1,000 gallons. And so the first 8,000 per month is a certain rate. And then between 8 and 25,000 per month is a certain rate. So this is just taking the average residential use and what that bill would be. So for smaller households, it's gonna be less, apartments, things like that. For larger homes, it would probably be slightly more.
Thank you. It was just pointed out to me too that you did give us a handout along with the other 6 sitting right here that I will now assimilate. So thank you for that information.
That answer, you got your question on that, because the tiers then of anything over 45,000, or because of 5 to 10, 10 to.
It did
25.
answer mine, because what it says to me is if it is an average, right, then it's not the lowest end, but it's also not the highest end. So it kind of says to me that we're not just showing you the lowest end of it to make ourselves look good. We did an average. Thank you.
Right, yep.
I think some of the statistics and the rates that we've heard, in 5 years, it's going to be this or that. Well, in 5 years plus 1 year, or in 7 years, our rates are gonna go down simply because we paid off the debt. And I think we need to realize that even though we're paying off the debt, once that debt is off, we're going to be paying less in a household for water than we are now.
The increase will be less, but the overall total is still increasing.
So when I look at the sample resident monthly bill at the bottom, 2033,
Yeah,
it'll be 189.
would be the increase, yeah. So 232 is 5402 and 233 is 5591. You are reducing the overall increase, but the bill itself is still
Okay.
continuing to rise. Yeah.
So that is
That's a 3.5%
bill
increase.
as opposed to a
Yeah.
net increase.
Yeah, so the bottom line is the difference, or the increase, and the monthly sample bill is that actual bill as it progresses through the years.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I think, next we're gonna go to electric, and Paul Quinn, who's on, is going to walk you through this portion.
Thank you, Angie.
Out clear.
So if we take a look at the next slide, similar assumptions for the electric utility in terms of our study period was the 10-year period, fiscal year 26 through fiscal year 35. We're looking at similar reserve targets, 90 days of operating expenses and power, plus 2% of our asset costs.
Can you
So for the
disconnect and
electric-
reconnect?
Yeah, you're one flight ahead.
Hang up and call back. That always works.
Did you want him to disconnect and,
I think he's going to.
yeah. Paul, if you can hear me, there's some feedback
There's feedback. You have
Yeah.
me,
from, I don't know if it helps for you to connect
Can you
and
hear me now?
reconnect. Try again.
Can you guys hear me now?
Still a little feedback.
So can we turn off this mic
Does
while
that help?
he's talking?
Yeah, he should hang up and call back.
Try now.
How about now?
Yeah.
A little better.
Yeah.
A little better? Okay. Apologize about that. If we look at
Now it's really soft.
If we look at the overall electric assumptions on that slide there, so similar assumptions for this utility where we're looking at a 10-year period, fiscal year 26 through 35. Similar reserve target minimums of 90 days of our operating expenses and power and 2% of our asset costs. So for the electric utility, that combined target is around $5.5 million today. Our growth assumptions for the utility really ties into the energy purchase forecast that was developed by your power purchase partners at Silver State Energy Association. They help you coordinate with the various entities that you're purchasing power from, and they also help you secure open market purchases. So they come up with a growth forecast for the utility every year. We're tying to that forecast that they provided to you all a couple months ago. Based on that forecast and your current rate schedule, that translates to about $19 million in annual rate revenue for the utility before rate adjustments. Our operating expenses were based on the fiscal year 26 budget plus inflation. For our future power cost projections, we started with that forecast, again, provided by Silver State Energy Association. We did make a few tweaks to those cost numbers to incorporate a few power purchase agreements that you entered in following that power cost forecast. One for the Parker Davis Hydro Project and another for the Pinal County Solar Project. Overall, that translates to about 4.75% inflation per year for the utility on its costs. For this utility, there's no existing debt service, so not having to repay anything there. And over the next 10-year period, we're anticipating about $70 million or so in capital expenses. So if we switch to the next slide.
On that slide, I noticed
Sure.
the residential is different. It's like 3 times higher, 60 residential. Why is it so much different from the water? It just includes
Yeah, so-
businesses?
So we're tying, you all receive a forecast of growth from the electric utility from the, your partners that help secure you power. They come up with a load forecast and energy forecast, and that's the forecast we're tying to for the electric utility.
For residential, we looked at the 5-year just residential growth. So just different ways we were looking at growth for different utilities.
Okay, so that's why the difference between the water and the electric?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct.
Correct. So on the next slide, we bring everything together. As Angie went through before, the colored bars here represent the utilities expense obligations. So that bottom dark blue bar represents your O&M expenses. The middle green bar represents your power costs. And then that gold bar on top represents rate-funded capital. The solid black line on top of that graphic is the forecast of your total revenues before any rate adjustments. And so if we compare that solid black line to your cost or the colored bars, what we can see is the utility is able to cover operating and power cost expenses before any rate adjustments, at least for the next several years. However, what it's not able to do is fund the capital program and get, some of those aging infrastructures replaced, as Gary went through earlier in the presentation. When we were originally reviewing these numbers with staff in the UAC, we were looking at 9% plus annual increases for this first several years. It became pretty clear to us after talking with staff in the UAC that 9% were just not acceptable in terms of an annual rate increase for the utility. So we went back and worked the numbers a little bit. What we're proposing here is capping the annual rate adjustments at 5% per year for the next several years. In order to make that happen, the utility is going to receive several transfers, one in 2028 from the Shared Utility Rate Stabilization Fund of about $3 million, and then another $2.15 million from the water utility spread across fiscal year 29 through fiscal year 31. Now that rate stabilization reserve, that will be replenished by fiscal year 32. The transfer from the water utility will be paid back to the water utility by fiscal year 36. And if you look back in the graphic, starting in that 2032, you'll notice there is another expense bar between the power cost and the rate funded capital. That represents that payback to the water utility for that $2.15 million transfer we're anticipating. The other takeaway looking at that graphic is that shaded gray area graphic in the background and that dotted gray line. So that shaded area represented in that gray color is our forecast of our ending cash reserves for the utility after rate adjustments and transfers from the rate stabilization fund and the water utility. You can see for the first couple of years, starting in 2028 or so, we're going to be dipping below the reserve targets, and we're going to be going below for several years in terms of the projection. The good news is we're able to meet that 90-day operating reserve target. What we're not able to fully meet is that 2% of our asset costs. So the combined target we're not able to quite meet until year 9 or 10 of the forecast. But again, what we're trying to do here for the electric utility is cap rate increases at 5% in the interim, but still get all our capital programs funded and make sure we're able to pay, our staff wages and our power costs, keep the lights on. The other table I'll note here is on the bottom, we're showing you a sample monthly bill for a typical residential customer. Now, we're assuming in this instance, this is using 1,200 kilowatt hours of energy on a monthly basis. That is, the residential average annual monthly usage statistic looking at the past couple of years. It should be noted when you're peaking in the summertime, you got the AC load on. The average monthly usage is closer to 2,000 kilowatt hours per month. But on the off, the shoulder months or off-peak season, energy usage is closer to 800, 900 kilowatt hours per month. The 1,200 represents kind of the average annual monthly usage statistics. So right now, under that usage, a residential customer is paying about $124 per month. With that 5% increase next year, that bill would be going up about $6 on a monthly basis to $130. And they would see a $6 or $7 increase on a monthly bill for the next several years with those 5% increases. So with that, I'll just see if there's any questions on the electric revenue requirement.
I do have a question for low-income residents. I think there's a program that maybe Gary could talk to, or Ned, that's available to our residents.
Hi, there is a energy assistance program that is provided through the state. Our utility office do have the applications available for our residents to apply for. And once they send the application through the state and it's approved, then the state sends money to the utility billing account for their assistance based on income requirements.
Do we have a good chunk of people that use that right now?
From when I was in utility billing, there was certainly a lot of customers who benefited from the program. And I could double check with utility billing to see what those numbers look like today.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
My question is actually going to be for our city manager, because my concern was, looking at this chart, the revenues for capital dips down below a comfort level. But our city manager explained to me what, if we have something catastrophic happen, how it's going to be repaired. And can you explain that?
Yeah, a couple of things there. I was, as was mentioned in the presentation, what you see here will still cover, there's two parts of the reserve target, and part of that is 90 days of operating expenses. And we will even at this amount shown here, we would always be able to meet those, the 90-day target for operating expenses. What we wouldn't be able to cover is the $1.5 million in construction. However, we do have other funds available that if there was a catastrophic emergency, the city has built up those reserve funds, and that we could tap into that for anything during that time that we did not have those funds available.
So we won't go without power then during that
Correct,
period of time?
yes, and the bottom line is we would not go without power.
Perfect, thank you.
If I might, Mayor, thank you for explaining how we're going to basically cover for the shortfall in the electric utility for the capital projects by those transfers, the utility rate stabilization fund, as well as borrowing from our internal, as was so well explained by Shannon, the internal singular enterprise account for utilities, but taking the water little portion and sliding 2.125, I think you said, over. Will this account for, or all of these in totality account for recovering our balance in the utility rate stabilization fund as well? Is that all included in these funds, in these rates?
It is.
Okay.
It is. And I have a little bit deeper dive into that stabilization fund and how it gets.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I can continue. Kind of just walking through, maybe bring this all together, how we're looking at closing the self-sufficiency gap. Like we talked about originally with electric, it was between 9.25 and 9.5 when we were starting with rate increases. We were looking at water, we were at about $1.3 million net shortfall. You've seen the electric for the capital, it's like 71.4 for the 10-year plan escalated, and kind of the impact of all the years of kind of holding back on some of those infrastructure repair and replacements. So the path forward, setting these 5% increases for electric, water, wastewater from 27 through 29, that's kind of step one. And using the funds that are available within, as we're just talking about here, to help between the utilities and not having to go out to get additional debt. And so that's kind of that piece of the pie that we're looking at. And so for that, I have a deeper dive into the rate stabilization. And as we've been talking about, it's kind of that shock absorber, but it's giving you the ability to smooth out those rates and cover those balances so that you can continue with those capital plans. It's kind of acting as intended, keeping those electric rates down. And so the plan to repaying that balance or that stabilization reserve is the water fund will immediately begin paying back at varying levels, about 100,000, but over the next few years through 2032, that rate stabilization fund will be back to $3 million. So electric will be the beneficiary of it, water will be the one paying it, electric will transfer back to water. So it's kind of a multi-level plan, if you will. But that is part of this rate design or these rate increases. And so I think as the city staff has noted, the infrastructure piece is just necessary at this time. And so can't kind of wait any longer.
So when we borrow from one account to another, the good news is we don't have to pay interest on it.
Right.
So if we went out on the market, we would have to pay interest and thus our rates would be increased.
Right.
Thank you.
Mhm. And I think, here's a slide about how our rates compare in southern Nevada. Ta-da!
Should we take a recess? No, we're not
No.
gonna take a recess.
Electric, water, and wastewater, so Boulder City today, with the increase, we talked about that, the 130.05, Nevada Energy's at 169.75. Looking at water, it's very similar, the 42.33 compared to the three listed there, Las Vegas, City of North Las Vegas, and City of Henderson. Wastewater seems to be below City of Henderson, but above City of North Las Vegas. So there's kind of a quick snapshot of how those rates compare.
I have a question for you. Is there any type of technology that's on the forecast to make electric systems self-sustainable to where we're paying a lot less? Is there anything, with all the technology that's out there? Is there any studies being looked at?
For that, I might defer to Paul to see if he has any knowledge of that. Did you hear that question, Paul?
Yeah, so the question is about technology that's available to make the utility self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's really just a financial problem. The utilities rates right now are not able to cover the capital program. So the way to solve that is through rate increases,
Period.
period.
Okay, thank you. Thought I'd ask.
The next slide is just kind of an overview of the monthly billing. Taking another look at it between electric, water, and wastewater for fiscal year 27, 28, and 29, and kind of as a whole, if you're looking at a total, it'd be a $9.47 increase for 27, $9.95 for 28, and $10.43 for 29. Questions? If not, we're going to move into the cost of service portion. I'll let Paul start again.
Thank you, Angie. So we're moving on to step 2. So as Angie went over earlier, when we think about a comprehensive rate study, usually we think about it in 3 steps. We have the revenue requirement, which is what is the rate increase we need to move forward, pay for everything, get the capital program funded. Step 2 is what we call the cost of service analysis. So it's a little bit alluded to in the title. What we're doing here is we are looking at different types of customers. Think about residential, small commercial, larger commercial customers. We're looking at them in those individual groups, and we're asking ourselves, does it cost us differently to serve different types of customers? In other words, what does it cost us to serve different groups of customers? In order to answer that question, we look at the individual utilities planning, engineering, design criteria. You look at your facility requirements. We look at how your users are using the system. What are the unique demands they're placing on the utility, and what does it cost the utility to meet those demands that the customers are placing on the system. Overall, we take away 2 results from this analysis. Number 1, as I mentioned earlier, what does it cost us to serve different customer groups? We can compare that cost to serve against how we're currently collecting revenue to see if there's any misalignments between how we're collecting revenue versus what it costs us to serve different customer groups. And number 2, on a more granular level, the cost of service indicates from a cost basis, what should we be charging from a fixed monthly cost basis? What should we be charging on a per kilowatt hour or a per gallon basis, and so on and so forth. So what we did for the water and electric utility is we looked at the cost of service, and we're going to start with the electric utility. Before we look at the overall results, I wanted to take you through kind of the high-level process of the steps in the cost of service. What we're doing is we're taking all the cost line items that make up the revenue requirement, and step 1, we're determining, what function does each individual cost line item perform for the utility and its customers. So we have 4 different functions of service for the electric utility. Number 1, do we have costs that are related to generating power, generating electricity that we're selling to our customers? Transmission, do we have costs related to operating or maintaining any local transmission assets? Do we have any costs related to operating or maintaining a distribution network, such as poles, transformers, conductors? And finally, dedicated customer-like costs, such as utility billing or customer service. Do we have some of those expenses? If so, we will be allocating it to that customer function. Once we have our costs in those 4 functions, we further classify them to 3 cost pools, those being for electric demand, energy, or power. So on this step, we're really asking ourselves, why are we incurring this expense? Is it a demand-related expense? In other words, is it a cost that is based upon the maximum rate of usage? Or maybe it's an energy-related expense, or in other words, it's a cost that's going to vary depending on the total consumption of energy over a time period. And finally, we have those dedicated customer-like costs like utility billing, our metering infrastructure, or maintaining kind of backbone infrastructure requirements. Once we have our costs in the cost pools, it gives us a very rational basis of allocating those costs to our different customer groups based on how those customer groups are using the system. So if we move on to the next slide, I'm going to show you the results for the electric cost of service analysis. In this graphic, we are showing you visually what the results are. If you look on the bottom of the graphic, we have each individual customer group that we evaluated as part of this analysis. So it's starting with residential. Above each customer group, we have a bar with a percentage. That percentage tells us what the cost recovery level is for each customer group. So if we're seeing a percentage less than 100, it means that that customer group is paying less than what it costs the utility to serve them. If you're seeing a number greater than 100%, it means those customers are paying more than what it costs the utility to serve them. You'll see a solid black line at that 100% mark. That solid black line, 100%, that represents that true cost of service target for each group. In other words, if the result for a particular group came in at 100%, that would mean the revenue the utility is collecting is perfectly offsetting the cost the utility incurs to serve that customer group. That target is constantly fluctuating. So it's going to be ebbing and flowing over time depending on certain things and certain changes that the utility is incurring. For instance, there could be a push for electrification of vehicles. And if that comes to happen, that's really going to change the way your residential customers are using the system. That's going to change their cost of service target, what it costs the utility to serve them, so it will change the target. Another way that, that target can change is the proportionality of your expenses. On the electric side, you just signed, 2 new purchase power agreements. When those kick in, it slightly changes the target for everybody. Because the target is, constantly ebbing and flowing a little bit over time, we want to get the results for folks within a plus or minus 10% range of that target. If we're able to get them within that plus or minus 10% range, we can reasonably say that we're charging those customers based on what it costs the utility to serve those customers. That range of reasonableness is shown by those dotted orange lines in the chart. So if we zoom out and we look at the results for the utility, what we're finding is that your residential and municipal customers are paying less than what it costs the utility to serve them, and they are both outside that range of reasonableness. On the flip side, your other customers, which are predominantly your commercial customers, are paying more than what it costs to serve them, and they are also outside that range of reasonableness. Now, as a footnote, the last rate study, which was performed 5 or 6 years ago, came up with similar trends that we found in our analysis and that we're showing you today. So with that, before Angie moves on to water, I just wanted to see if there was any questions on the overall cost of service process or on the electric results.
Mayor, if I might. Well, as I look at this, I would, and a layperson's view, think, well, all those that are far above the 100% easily make up for those that are under 100%. But I don't know who's paying those bills because it doesn't say. It looks like some of them might be the city itself. Can we describe what looks like a significant imbalance in most of these are far above? I get why there could be a little bit below in the residential and municipal, but tell us what this means with these others so far above, please.
Yeah, that's a great question. So most of your customers are going to fall in that residential bucket or the general service bucket. So that general service bucket would be, most of your commercial customers. You do have some commercial customers like the hospital or some larger commercial customers that are charged under a different rate schedule. And so that's why we're showing you, the secondary, primary time of use, the large general and the Boulder City Hospital groups. But predominantly, most of your customers are either going to be in that residential bucket or that general service bucket. Does that help?
Well, it does, but I still don't understand how those aren't making up for those 2 that are below. And let's get a little more specific. If we have our Public Works Director or maybe Angie, who is it or what type of business? I don't necessarily need to know who, but are some of these city costs? Like I look at area lighting, I'm not sure what the definition is, but is that street lights throughout the community? And if so, that sounds like the city is covering that cost. And so I don't understand what this is. If we could get a more localized description of that would be helpful, please.
Sure. Before maybe staff weighs in, the city accounts would largely be captured under that municipal category.
So I can key in on a few items, but there's, on the area street lighting is gonna be our street lights. And then we have our facilities, and then with the large general service, but I see what you're asking is, you have 2 that are lower, the rest are high. Why isn't that balancing that out? And Paul or Angie, I'm gonna ask you to.
I do want to say, Paul, on that primary distribution, weren't those low dollars? So even though the 269% is extreme, it's really a very minimal? Or could you speak to that, the primary distribution?
Yeah, that's correct. So if we're looking at dollars or number of accounts, it's, most of your customers, most of your dollars are coming from residential or your general service rate schedules. You do have other rate schedules available, and we did evaluate them. So we wanted to share the results with you, but as Angie noted, your primary time of use, secondary time of use, that's very low dollars coming into the utility.
So if you were to look at dollars in this chart, you would see it's a big swing, but it might be just a few $1,000s in difference. So perhaps a different chart would show that. So it's not as if like it's 200%,
It's
way
not dollar
above.
for dollar when we're looking
No,
at percentages.
No, it's looking at
Yeah.
classes of service. And
Okay.
because that class shifted, it shouldn't be representative of actual dollars, if that helps a little bit. And we could provide more
The
of a
explanation
chart.
does. It would have been kind of helpful to see what that dollar amount
Yeah.
was to flip, so we could kind of visualize that. But
Right.
now I understand that strictly percentages and the dollars associated with those vary
Right.
greatly.
And so
Okay.
this is where you take this result and start to look at how do you interpret it? How do you utilize it? Where do you go next? But that's just like that starting point. But yeah, it's not dollar for dollar.
Okay,
so
thank you
hopefully
for
that helps.
explaining that. Thank you.
Is the-
Mayor, if I may, this is just a starting point. So this was just an overview to show that the cost of service analysis revealed some inequities. So phase 2 of what we plan to do over the next year and bring back to council in fiscal year 28 is an analysis of those inequities, how to balance them, and what is a more fair tiered rate structure that accurately captures the cost of service for the type of use. And so this is just to illustrate the inequities. So we haven't delved deep into what those are and what needs to be changed to equalize it. That's phase 2 of the rate study, so.
Is the primary and secondary, primary being peak times? What's the difference?
Yeah, I believe
between-
that's correct. And then secondary,
Yeah, so that has to do with the different infrastructure requirements. So that primary time of use, that I believe is only serving one customer. That customer actually owns some of their own electrical infrastructure. So they're on a different rate schedule
Like
to
solar
acknowledge
panels or
that they
something?
have.
sorry,
Go
Like
ahead.
solar panels or a solar customer? What customer would that be?
singular customer that is.
Oh, golf course. Okay, I just wanted to.
Yeah,
some
it's not that
clarification
they
on what
own
meant.
generation assets, it's that they own, their own transformers, their own poles, some of their own conductors. So some of their own distribution infrastructure, they own, they maintain, they're responsible for replacing.
Thank you.
So moving on to cost of service water. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Not going. There it goes. Okay. Similar to what we talked about with electric, we start with that overall revenue requirement. Then we start to allocate those costs by function. We have different functions, obviously, with water. You're looking at customer, then meter and services. You have base and peak capacities with water. You're also looking at fire protection. You have non-pot water, and then you have effluent. So we take all of those functions and look to allocate those costs to your different customer class, which is residential, city potable, non-pot, commercial, and then golf courses. So it's that, kind of that exact process, but with different, let's say, functions, and obviously have some different customer classes for water. So as we look at the cost of service results for water, looks a little different in the sense that most of your classes are in that range of reasonableness, that 10% either side of that dotted black line, which represents 100%. You do have residential that's under collecting just slightly, commercial over collecting just a little bit as well. Obviously, there's that the private golf courses in the quarry are over collecting. But in this case, these are tied to different rates, and so that is pushing those rates and those costs in those directions. So the golf courses are tied to residential, where the quarry is tied to the commercial rate. And so that's more of like a policy type decision that could be made to bring those in line for cost of service. So those can be explained a little more. And then non-pot, just slightly over collecting, but we didn't have the extremes as much in water as we did with electric. And the two that are over kind of are represented by those residential or those rate ties. And so for this, moving forward in 2028, it's looking at addressing that cost of service through a phase-in. And this is what staff is going to take a look at over the next year. We've looked at several different rate design considerations for electric, increasing that residential customer charge towards cost-based unit costs, developing a tiered energy rate, uniform delivery charge for residential customer, combined delivery and demand charge for commercial customers, or implement a delivery charge for municipal customers. You can see there's a wide range of things to be reviewed and studied over the next year. For water, it's about potentially bringing those meter size changes into align with AWWA standards, recommending potentially a commercial, for the commercial customers, to a uniform rate versus a tiered rate. We've looked at potentially separating out a new large customer commercial class from just the commercial, so they're not all lumped together, and potentially increasing those ratios between the tiers for residential. So there's many, many different things and considerations to look at, in this next year, taking those results from cost of service and then starting to move through potential rate design options, structures, things that could potentially better align for electric and water for the rates. And all of these things have been included in the models that are presented with this study as well. So those are all go to the city staff. Is there any questions on that? From here, it's just the next steps. I believe there's a request for an overall adoption of the 5% rate increases for the three water, wastewater, and electric from 27, 28, and 29. And then there's the September 8th business impact statement consideration and approval. Then the September 22nd council meeting to adopt rates. And then, as we were just discussing, staff is to return with rate design in 2028.
So how often do we have to do this study?
A good reasonable is between 3 to 5 years, and it's really important maybe when there's very significant changes to within the system. So every 3 to 5 years as you're kind of continuing on, or if there's some substantial capital or something that has changed dramatically, then we would recommend doing it at that point too.
So do we require us to have this study done?
It's not required. It's just general best practice, and to have an outside agency to take a look at our capital needs, our operating expenses, and so that we know that the rate study is fair, and we use different companies so that it's, we see what they find versus the others.
So the recommendations every 5 years to do this rate study?
3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years. So now my other question was, I had a concern about where the numbers were coming from for my the different graphs that are in here. And I want to thank staff for getting me the numbers so that I have the black and white numbers also with how they came up with the different numbers that are in this study. So thank you, staff, for doing that for me. Appreciate it.
I'm not trying to move her off, I'm just trying to get, so, good evening. My name is George Kahn. I've been advising the utility I was a former director of the Colorado River Commission for 15 years. Mayor Hardy probably remembers me from those days, hopefully fondly. And I also ran a trade association in Washington for public utility districts throughout the state. There are 28, all with elected officials running their own utilities. So I just wanted to sort of encapsulate some of the things you've heard today. So one, FCS staff have done a wonderful job of making sure that the data that is for you, before you, is accurate for you to be making good decisions based on good data, which is really important. And I don't want to skip over the comment about the technology. I believe you had a question on self-sufficiency.
Yes.
So there's really no technology fix, but there are fixes. And what you've heard today is leading to that. Keeping ahead of the infrastructure requirements, not waiting to have a big reserve to draw down on, and not to wait for interfund loans, but keeping ahead of the infrastructure. Because the way to build self-sufficiency in the utility is to make sure you have infrastructure that's not going to fail. And making those investments when they need to be made. And as you saw from the chart that Shannon and Gary showed you, your infrastructure is old. It needs to be updated and replaced to be modern. So to keep ahead of that infrastructure is a way to reduce the cost profile, to bring self-sufficient and fill that gap. The other is keeping ahead of your resources. When you know you need resources, to go ahead, and you know today with declines in Hoover Dam, that you need to be ahead of the curve to be looking at the resources you need in the future. You are doing that. And you should the staff should be commended, and City Council for looking forward. You have a solar project that you have a contract for in town site. You already have that. You have another one in Arizona that you've contracted for or looking at. You have an allocation of Parker and Davis projects that will be coming forward in 2028 that you've done. And you're looking at opportunities that the leases you've made for battery storage and solar might provide some resources. So the way to bridge the gap isn't so much on the technology, but it's keeping the technology you have, upgrading it, and making sure that it's current. Because that will preserve the resources that you need and help lower that gap, so you're not coming back and having to make emergency repairs, which are always possible, but you're not allowing these infrastructure to go and reach failure, which is the worst way you could possibly run a utility. You want to build ahead of time of what you need. So I didn't want to let that slip because it was a really great question to what you need to do. And individual consumers, they have the ability to reduce their energy costs either by getting assistance or frankly doing things that, buying a more efficient light bulbs, buying more insulation, doing what you can at a local level and having the utility help them. So I didn't want to lose that. The last thing I will say is that FCS does a really good job. I worked with them when I was in Washington State. You now have a model that they created for you that you can use to start to identify some of the inequities, some of the fairness issues, and also what-if scenarios for various resource options that you might have in the future. So these are good things. And what you're doing today, and with the great work that staff has done, is you're developing a model that you can help use to help build the utility for another 50 years so that at least you're upgrading the systems that are antiquated and need to be updated to try to reduce that cost curve in the future to help mitigate the rate impacts that might be there in the future, because costs are going to go up. As you have, you've been very fortunate, just like the rest of Southern Nevada, to be able to tie into this resource that you have as Boulder City. But like all that's going on with the river system, the more that water is reduced in the system, the less you have of the low-cost hydro resource. But the smart money is on preparing for that and just not letting the market dictate what you pay, but taking control of your own destiny by purchasing resources and looking at resources with your colleagues in Southern Nevada that can minimize the risk of resources and hopefully reduce cost increases in the future. We have benefited from that low-cost hydro, but now Mother Nature is teaching all of us a lesson. And part of that is being able to adapt. So I just wanted to close that out. I know you've got another agenda. I'm happy to take any questions, but you know, your staff have done a wonderful job at helping to develop this resource, this analysis, and mitigating the impacts, as you saw with the transfers of funds to help address, to try to minimize those rate increases.
Any questions?
I just wanted to say thank you for all this information because I didn't know a lot about these different areas, and I feel that I was really educated well by staff and everybody, so I really appreciate that because I walk away with a better understanding of what's going on with our power. And I know we have so many of our residents that are struggling, and you don't want to overcharge anybody. And so I think it really helped by going over this and making sure that we were being fair to everybody. So thank you, and thank you, staff. Appreciate it.
I just have a quick comment in reference, I know nobody likes the word conservation, but the city actually has on bcnv.org under utilities and billing, energy saving tips, how to pay online. And they really go into, it looks like Ms. Sneed has a whole layout. So thank you again, staff, that's available to the residents. You know, every penny counts, and it may sound horrible to, you know, turn your air conditioning up or down or whatever, but it makes a big difference. I have a lot of trees on my property, so water is what I pay more than even electricity, believe it or not. But there's ways to conserve. So thank you for putting this out for our residents as well. bcnv.org. Utilities and billing.
Mayor, if I might comment just really quickly on that. I appreciate that we do have a lot of information that's available, and if the council were to move forward with the proposed rate changes, we have a little bit of time, and I can work with our communications team to make that more available. I think that's an excellent idea that there, as Mr. Khan noted, that there are ways to mitigate some of the impacts from this type of a rate increase, and that certainly the city could play a role in informing our residents and our businesses in ways to reduce their overall costs.
Right, and I think we forget too that we're at war, and oil is a commodity that's, you know, becoming less and less. So under the strain of all that's going on in our nation, to try to hold our rates down to where they are, it's really good. I lived in Vegas for 25 years. I moved to Boulder City, and I think I saved like $1,200 a year, just because we do have Hoover Dam, what's left of it, and the way that we do business down here, and no debt and no bonds, and all those things come to play. So, you know, Boulder City is actually a good place to live right about now. But keep in mind, we are at war, and so we don't know how that's gonna end up in the next 6 months to a year.
If we can power through this right now. Okay, anybody else have any questions? So we're looking at 11, so the question we have with the council then is, where do we want to go from here as far as the rate study? Mr. City Manager.
So that final slide had some next steps. I think what we're looking for, we wanted council to receive, and the community to receive this information, to have the discussion that we've had. And then we're really looking for direction from council that we would bring back the business impact statement at your first meeting in September. And then we would actually bring the rate changes back to the council at your second meeting in September, so that the new rates could go into effect in October.
So today you need a approval to move forward and come back to us.
Correct.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move that City Council directs staff to continue with the next steps as presented in the presentation from FCS.
I'll second that.
Discussion.
I have a couple discussion points, please. I think it's imperative that we acknowledge the hard work and expertise of our Utility Advisory Committee members. Howard Anala, Larry Carr, Randall Lemos, Ken Howell, and Mike Giroux. Individually and collectively, there's a tremendous amount of experience and value to our community. And I, for one, and I think I can speak for the entire council, express our gratitude to the work that our Utility Advisory Committee does, a volunteer group of citizens who lend their expertise to this particular focus. And I'd like to say thank you to them. Larry, you're here, thank you, and to the rest who hopefully will get the message as well. We are really, really thankful for them. And it's important to note that they have poured over this probably a lot more than we have, with expert eyes, right, an expert background, and they give the recommendations. It's worth noting that they recommend that we proceed with these next steps as well. And I think it's also very important to note that as we look at our strategic plan, that these things that Mr. Khan pointed out are exactly what have been included in our strategic plan. And, you know, for me, it's better to have my air conditioner serviced on a regular basis than to replace it every 6 years, because it's way more affordable and the cost is level, right? And I think that's the point you were making is if we address these things rather than peaks and valleys, but keep it on a level field, then we're reducing those cost peaks that we hit and then have to build back up, and then things start to fail, and then we have to do this big chunk of investment. But if we keep the investment steady and moderate, then we're able to maintain it without these outages and better reliability and dependability in our service. I think that's an important part of our strategic plan. I think this council has worked hard with staff to make sure that we work in that direction, and this is an important step in that direction. Those are the only points of comment that I had during that, Mayor. Thanks.
I just also wanted to thank all involved in this process. This process isn't one that we always like to talk about. It's like my friend who's a dentist and says no one really wants to come and see me because they're not very excited to see me, right? No one really wants to take a look at a rate study because they know the chances are that it's not going to go down. Because the cost to provide the service goes up with labor. We know what happened during COVID when you had to buy on the open market. It got a little crazy. The cost tripled at one point to purchase on the open market almost. So there are many factors that are involved in this. I just think to myself, if I have a piece of infrastructure out there from 1950, though those were great cars, there's not too many of them left on the road. You know, you just have to really take a look at how we're going to move forward with the services that we're providing to our community. And as with cars, as I mentioned it, though it was a nice car, it's very different than what you drive today. And that's the same with electricity. How we provide that to you, the type from the 4 kV to the 12, is very different. Things change over time. So not just, and we need to pay for what we receive. And I see this as thank you for really taking a good look at it. As you said, none of us wants to be overcharged or overcharge anyone. One of the beautiful parts of living in this community really is that we pay less for a lot of what we pay for. Not our homes per se, but a lot of what goes on inside of our homes. So we're really lucky that way. And so I agree that I think that due diligence has been done on the part of our advisory committee, the part of our staff, those who did the deep dive for us, and I see that we have needs. So thank you.
I just like to kudos to the UAC as well. If you really want to see with the background of all that brought us to today, May 6th is the UAC meeting and July 8th. Look at that meeting. Both of them total 6 hours. That's long for the UAC. And I mean, they asked every possible question they could ask and then deep dived after that just to get to this point. So nothing was done undercover. Nothing was done in secret. It's all out and open. Matter of fact, it's an open meeting that they have to conduct just like we do right now. And they really hashed it out. So I would, anybody who has any concern of why the rates are where they are or where they're going or not going, whatever is decided, take a look at May 6th and July 8th. And those are volunteers, as Councilwoman Jorgensen said. They volunteer their time. And I would actually ask people to, join on the commissions because they advise us. They do that deep dive. So when we get to this point, we have loads and loads and loads of paper to study to catch up to what they did. So kudos to the UAC and all the commissions that are out there that prepare us to make decisions. Thank you.
So I appreciate presentations, plural, the people who have been doing the quote-unquote deep dives. Our utility commission are people who are experts in utilities. I mean, Boulder City, that's what we started as, a utility, as it were. It's called a dam, and that's what we do and what we've been doing. So this discussion we're having did not happen in a vacuum, and it's still not a vacuum, and we still have abilities to have input. I appreciate everyone that's been a party to this and people who have volunteered their time and effort and their input tonight. So I appreciate that. Having had a motion and a second, is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Thank you, it's unanimous. Appreciate it, and we'll take a recess.
Hi, Jen, if you can hear me, the city of Boulder City. I believe we will get going soon. Thanks for hanging in there.
No problem. Thank you.
Welcome back, City Council. We are now on item 12.
So, Angela Mannanen, Budget Manager. Item 12 is the consideration of Bill number 2135. This would be approving agreement number 26111 between the City of Boulder City and Bell Atlantic Mobile Systems, DBA Verizon Wireless, for a communication tower located at 2100 Canyon Road. Verizon has been operating a cellular communication tower at this location since the year 2000. The original lease expired in November of 2020 and has been operating month to month since then. The tenant has a desire to renew the lease. The proposed term is 15 years, dated back to December 2020, with an option of a 10-year extension. The initial rent would be $2,791.50 a month, which is $33,498 annually. The annual fee increase would be 2%. For the remainder of the term of the lease, this will generate $310,407 in revenue through 2035. And if the 10-year extension is exercised, it will generate an additional $406,863 in revenue through fiscal year 45. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
I only want to know, do they pay utilities?
Do they pay utilities on the tower? No. This would be a general fund lease.
No,
Okay.
They pay for electric utility.
At the
yeah,
tower?
For their, for use of electricity that they use. They pay any utilities that they need to use for the cell tower. I don't know if there's any water.
Right, but
But for
they're paying their
electric-
share for utilities, okay.
They pay for their electric service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve 2135.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. We will move to item 13. Mr. Mays?
Good evening, Mayor Hardy, members of the City Council. Michael Mays, your Deputy City Manager. Title 11 of the City Code is also referred to as the zoning ordinance. This is the part of the City Code that regulates development, redevelopment, and land uses within the community. It's a very important part of the City Code. The last time the Title 11 or zoning ordinance was updated, comprehensive update, was the 1980s. What we have heard from businesses and customers throughout the years is that the code is hard to read, to understand, and that some of the regulations are dated, and it has needed a major overhaul for some time. Because of the significant work that would be involved with an update to Title 11, this is beyond the limited resources that the city staff has to complete this work. Further, we benefit from utilizing a third-party consultant that has the expertise and knows the best practices throughout the country to provide recommendations to improve the code, to make it easier to read and to understand, and to implement zoning and planning trends that have been happening since the 1980s. So the city conducted an RFP to seek qualified consultants for this work, and the city selected Lisa Wise Consulting for the work. And this work will follow the guidance and feedback we received from a joint meeting of the Planning Commission and the City Council back in June of 2025. And so staff is recommending for the council to approve Resolution 8193. I can answer any questions regarding this resolution and contract with Lisa Wise Consulting, We also have Jen Murillo from Lisa Wise Consulting on Zoom that can answer any council questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, I would accept a motion.
Mayor, I'll move to approve Resolution 8193.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Just that having served as a planning commissioner over the years, and same with Councilmember Booth, Title 11 is very comprehensive, and there's so many references for additional other codes throughout it that it can be cumbersome, and some of it is so old that we're missing things or need to update things, and it's a very large task. I think this is a good hire for Lisa Wise and the company to help bring that to fruition. It's been a long time coming. I think all of staff would agree, and our planning commission would likely agree as well, that this is long overdue, and it'll be a great improvement to city services for both those who need to read and follow Title 11, as well as those on the other side with staff who need to administer that code. So I think this is going to be really beneficial to the community.
Go ahead.
I'm so excited about this. Back when I was a planning commissioner, we had townhouses, and they've had townhomes for over 30 years, and we're just now getting where we're going to have it in our code. I think that's exciting because it's affordable housing for people, and so townhomes is really exciting. Glad this is being done. It needed to be done ages and ages ago. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say nay. Thank you. It's unanimous. Then we go to number 9.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Marissa Adu, Airport Manager. Before consideration of the resolutions for the air traffic control tower, I wanted to share a brief history of how we've gotten here today. The need for an air traffic control tower at the airport stemmed over 19 years ago. In 2007, when the FAA conducted a ramp survey and safety analysis, which this analysis identified increased aircraft activity at the airport without an operational control tower as an operational concern. Specifically, it identified conflicts involved with fixed-wing aircraft conducting straight-in approaches while other aircraft were established in the traffic pattern, as well as heavy helicopter operations crossing active runways. Similar concerns were identified later through the airport's runway safety action plan and risk control survey. These concerns remain relevant today. Boulder City has a diverse mix of operations, including commercial air tours, helicopters, general aviation, flight training, historically skydiving activity, which staff is currently working to reestablish at the airport. We continue to experience periods of congested traffic where multiple aircraft are operating in the pattern, helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft are operating simultaneously, and at some times, 2 to 3 runways may be in use at the same time. The purpose of the tower is not to suggest that the airport is currently operating unsafely. It is the next step in managing the volume and complexity of our operations and provide a safer and more orderly and more efficient operating environment as the airport continues to develop. Based on the earlier safety findings, the city applied into the FAA Federal Contract Tower Program in 2011. In 2018, the FAA completed its benefit cost analysis and determined that the Boulder City Airport had a benefit cost ratio of 2.23, which qualified the airport to be in the program. When that determination approached expiration in 2023, the city reapplied, and in June of 2023, the FAA issued an updated benefit cost ratio of 1.07, maintaining the airport's eligibility to be in the program. The Federal Contract Tower Program itself has been in existence since 1982. It allows the FAA to provide air traffic control services at qualifying airports through private companies under contract with the FAA. The controllers are employees of those private contractors rather than city employees or direct FAA employees, but they operate within the FAA's system and are required to meet all the FAA qualifications and training requirements. The FAA funds the air traffic control services while the airport sponsor is responsible for providing and maintaining the tower facility. There will be a significant operational transition for the airport community as the tower becomes operational. We will work collaboratively with the FAA and contract tower operator, our tenants, commercial operators, local pilots, and airport working group to prepare everyone for that change. The city has completed the required tower siting, environmental assessment, design, and the project is now ready to move into construction. Construction of this project is scheduled to begin next month, September 2026, and completed by the end of April 2028. The total project cost will be just over $24 million, and just over $23 million of that will be funded through FAA grants, and the remaining $992,000 will be contributed from the airport fund. For your consideration tonight are 5 resolutions. The first resolution, 8187, to approve agreement between the city and Q&D Construction as the contract manager at risk for the construction of the air traffic control tower in the amount of $21,666,322. Resolution 8188, to approve an agreement between the city and Kimley Horn Associates for construction management and special services and the amount of $2,946,846. Resolution 8189 will accept an FAA grant in the amount of $4,619,011. Resolution 8190 will be accepting a grant agreement in the amount of $5,362,975. And Resolution 8190, accepting FAA grant agreement in the amount of $10 million. Staff recommends approval of Resolutions 8187 through 8191 to allow the project to begin construction. You guys have any questions for me?
Any questions?
I just have a question. You said there was a benefit cost analysis in 2018. It was I don't know if you read it.
2.23.
And then in 2023, it was 1.07. So less traffic later?
Right, there was less traffic. We had the COVID-19 happened. There was a decrease in our commercial traffic with the tour operators at the airport, and that reflects in that number there. The minimum BC or cost benefit ratio needed to qualify into the program is of 1.0.
Okay, and do you see the traffic coming back?
The traffic has increased steadily since we prepared our submission in 2023. We're seeing about 10,000 operations more each year. So with the added operators coming in and filling in where others have left, and then we also have new development that will add hangars at the airport, which will in turn increase traffic.
And get us back up even to the number where before it was highly recommended. Or beyond. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions?
I do. Base operations, will you be expanding your staff?
Just for this, that is not planned at this time.
Okay, thank you.
So if I were to accept a motion, it would be a motion to include 8187, 8188, 8189, 8190, and 8191. Is that what you were ready to do?
Well, I wanted to ask or have a dialogue with
Okay.
Marissa, if I could, please, thank you. You mentioned that it will be a transition, and we've talked about this, and I believe the change, there will be some resistance and some acceptance and some in the middle. Explain how, please, the transition will occur with the airport, the air traffic controllers. Will it come in right off the top and start running things, or will there be a transition where they listen and look and learn? And then will there be dialogue with pilots, open potential for them to interact together? Can you explain, please, if there is a plan, what that might be?
Sure. So when the contract tower is staffed with the controllers, there will be a period of time where they will observe our traffic at the airport, and before they are directly controlling the traffic. So there'll be that observation period, or they'll provide guidance, that kind of thing, over the radio. And as far as getting everyone ready for that transition period, we'll plan to communicate to the community, have outreach, possibly do some like training or informational videos, pamphlets, something like that, with the community to engage with them, working with our airport working group, and then hopefully we can sit down with the contract manager and be able to have conversations with the airport working group and the stakeholders.
Yeah, thank you. I think a lot of what has been expressed to me by some that are slightly resistant is that the interactions with what turns out to be the same contracting company at towered airports in the valley is sometimes less than positive. Is there a way that we can have regularly scheduled follow-up meetings, quarterly, semi-annually, to give feedback, to receive feedback, to make sure that we don't have the same negative interactions that occur at some of the other local towered airports here in Boulder City?
I think a collaborative relationship will be really important to maintain with that air traffic that manager at the tower. So I think that those are possibilities, is holding regularly scheduled meetings, if not monthly, quarterly, with that individual, and trying to engage the stakeholders in the tenant community.
Thank you. I think doing all that we can to help soften that initial change. It'll be a change, but having been a flight instructor at Boulder City and in the area for dozens of students, the students really become better pilots when they learn how to interact with ATC. And I think that will not just translate to students, but also veteran folks that have been flying for years. And many of our folks down there have commercial or military experience, so this really won't be that much of a change, or fly to areas in the country where there are towers. So probably won't be much of a change for many of them, but I think as much as we could do to help soften that change in those things that you just suggested will be very positive as we go forward. So thank you for answering those questions.
Thank you.
Mayor, if there's no other discussion, I'll make a recommendation to approve all those resolutions herein.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to approve all of the resolutions before us, 180, 187 through 8191. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now go to, we did 9, so we go to 14.
The city is currently negotiating the sale of less than half an acre to the residential owner at the address of 395 Avenue I. For this subsequent purchaser to be able to access the land that they would be purchasing from the city, it requires the vacation of a 1-foot no-access easement that is along Nevada Way at this, in this area. Staff is supportive of this vacation. To consider the vacation of the 1-foot access easement, it does require a public hearing and consideration of Resolution 8194, subject to the finding that the public will not be materially injured in the proposed vacation. With that, I can answer any questions.
Any questions? I would accept a motion.
Oh, we need a public
Oh,
hearing.
we need a public hearing. So I'll open the public hearing. Again, this is a public hearing related to the 1-foot restricted area, no access easement. And this does not include any trees.
I wanted to lift the spirits and say you could plant a lot of trees in that 1 foot.
Anyone else for public hearing? Close the public hearing and consideration of Resolution 8194.
Move to approve 8194.
A second.
Based on the findings.
Moved and seconded. Is there discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That's unanimous. Thank you. That brings us to number 15. Angela?
Hi, Angela Mannanen, Budget Manager. Item 15 is for the class and compensation. It's Resolution 8195, which would repeal and replace Resolution 8151, which was the last time the class and compensation was brought to council. So the class and compensation for fiscal year 27 was approved on May 26, 2026 for the positions for fiscal year 27. On June 23rd, it was brought back to council, and the recently, at that time, approved bargaining units of the police and blue collar were added to the class and compensation. So now, since then, there are a couple of positions that are being requested to be added. One is a public safety dispatcher supervisor title. This would not add headcount. It would promote 2 of our dispatchers to supervisors. There is also a request to change our police support services manager, which is currently an E3 position, to an E2 position as a support services assistant manager. We are also requesting to remove the title of dispatcher trainee, as it will no longer be used. And also, both the police supervisors and the supervisors' collective bargaining contracts have not been signed at this point, and so those will be brought back at another point in time. Happy to answer any questions about the changes being requested.
Any questions?
I just wanted to thank the police department for coming up with an idea that's saving us money instead of adding to the budget. So thank you very much, our local police department there. Thank you.
Any other questions? I would accept a motion.
I'll move to approve resolution number 8195 to repeal and replace resolution number 8151, and also to approve the updated fiscal year 26-27 classification titles and position ranges.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. It's unanimous. Thank you. That brings us to number 16.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It is that time again. The Nevada Legislature will be convening for the 84th legislative session in February of 2027. And Boulder City has one bill draft request where we are allowed to submit a request to change state law. We have met as a city staff. We've looked over the past 2 years for opportunities. The city staff did not see, while there's lots of opportunity for change, we think, none of which related to us specifically as the city of Boulder City. We could not find any to bring forward to city council from a city perspective. We did meet with the Nevada State Railroad Museum recently. As you know, they're going to be opening our facility in Southern Nevada here, the Railroad Museum. It's a state facility that's going to be grand opening on September 19th. And the museum has submitted in the state budget to the governor's office for several positions. There are on this handout in front of you what the museum is submitting for. And there's hope that the governor will include these in the budget. However, if the governor does not include them in a budget, one thing the city could advocate for is for additional funding for staff for the State Railroad Museum here in Boulder City. It is a huge generator of tourism and additional economic development here, and I think will be a really great asset for our city. And Dr. McMahon is here to answer questions if there's any interest in that. We also have Warren Hardy. He is our lobbyist, so we retain Warren Hardy Strategies to represent us at the legislature each session. And so if there's specific questions for him, he's also available.
I would love to have the very patient director of the museum people to come up and share what he thinks.
Mayor, can I ask one question of our city attorney first, please?
Yeah, you can.
Is this a potential idea then that we're having this conversation, that council put forward a bill draft request supporting these staffing levels? Is that kind of the connection here, or is?
Yes, so we
Okay.
didn't have any ideas for the city specifically, but we found that the state museum could use additional funding, and the city has used its bill for this before. So before the facility was built, the city did use its bill draft request to request funding for construction of the museum. Ultimately, our bill did not move forward, but it helped start the conversation, and money was included in the budget for that. So it's proved successful in the past, so that's why we thought if the Railroad Museum's funding request didn't get approved, it's perhaps something that the city could help. Yes, it would be our bill, our advocacy, but we would be supporting the Railroad Museum.
Maybe a little horsepower behind that request then. Thank you for
Yes.
clarifying that.
Sorry for
Okay.
clarifying.
I just want to
It's
make sure we're all
a
on the
little
same
bit
page
tired.
as this goes forward. Thank you.
No problem.
I mean, this is an open discussion as to what we would consider as a bill draft request as well, but recognizing that we have one possibility, I would love to have the doctor come up.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. For the record, Dr. Christopher McMahon, Executive Director of the Nevada State Railroad Museum.
Teach us.
So as you know, Mr. Mayor, as a state agency, we are executive branch employees. Every legislative session in the year leading up to it, agency heads like myself put together budget requests that then filter up through the bureaucracy, ultimately landing on the governor's desk, and the individual who holds office at that time makes the determination what they want to prioritize and send to the legislature as their recommended budget. So when city staff reached out to me about this as a possible BDR on the city's behalf, I provided them the same information that I have sent as my budget request for staffing levels. Why this is a concern for the museum and potentially the city is we are, as staff said, a huge economic driver within the city. Currently, we are at critical staffing levels, meaning we have reduced services. We have reduced our ability to go and present classroom activities. We have limited the number of school tours that we're offering to school students, not just here within Boulder City, but throughout Southern Nevada and Northern Arizona. And we've reduced our operations from 7 days a week down to 5. Now, why that matters to the city of Boulder City is each day we're closed is people that are not staying longer. People who are visiting Boulder City, yes, they come for the dam, yes, they come to visit Lake Mead, but study after study shows people are interested in having cultural experiences during their holidays as well. And if they can do two things in Boulder City, like going to the dam and visiting the museum, they're more likely to stay within that community, patronize local businesses. That not only lifts our fellow entrepreneurs and business owners up, it generates tax revenues for the city, and that's not a burden on the residents. That's not taxes that they're having to pay for. It's being paid for by the guests to the city. And so as we're limiting our operation, it does have this ramification on the city itself. I think that kind of gives you the big picture, and I'm happy to answer more specific questions if you have those about what we're asking for and why.
What's your staffing for the Carson City Railroad Museum, for instance?
So as a point of comparison, the Nevada State Railroad Museum in Carson City currently has 7 additional staff members that this museum lacks. Most critically, those positions would be professional curatorial staff that manage the collections and provide lifelong educational programming for various age groups. They also have a more extensive maintenance and restoration for their railroad operations, even though they only operate on a summer schedule, whereas we operate year-round.
So you're looking at about 7 people that are working with the Carson City State Railroad Museum.
So they have 7 additional, I believe their total, and I'm just going off the top of my head here, I believe their total is 13 or 14, where we currently have 5.5, about to have 6.5.
So that's where you come up with it would be good to have another 6, quote unquote, or 7.
That's correct.
People. So the way the BDR works, or where the governor's budget, it's in the governor's budget, and the governor's budget, if the governor's budget doesn't pass in toto, then we could have a BDR that would be separate and distinct and allow us to lobby, as it were.
That's
I
not
s-
for
I
me
see
to
the
answer,
lobbyist
that's
back
a
there.
question for you as council. I'm
Yeah.
just here to answer any questions pertaining to the museum.
All right, go ahead.
So are the 5.5 positions currently funded through the state?
Yes, all the positions at the museum are state employees. We have a unique funding model within the museum system itself. We are the only museum of the 7 state museums that's required an element of self-funding. We do that through the sale of train ride tickets. That covers about half of our expenses as far as salaries, operating expenses, et cetera. The remaining is split between room taxes, which constitute the majority, and a small portion from general funds. So of that remaining half that we're not responsible for, it's an 85-15 split, with 85 coming from room taxes, 15% coming from general fund.
Okay, thank you.
So do you have volunteers over at the train station?
Yes, we currently have 120 active volunteers. They do provide a lot of assistance, particularly through things like train operations. There are some concerns that, for example, guest services during particularly the week. How do I plan operating hours on somebody that may or may not be there? Educational program requires specific training on how to do things like meet the curriculum requirements through Nevada's educational system.
So
And
if somebody wanted to be a volunteer, how would they find out how to be a volunteer?
so that information is available on our website, boulderrailroadmuseum.org. You can also reach out to any of the staff. Myself, Tiani Marie will both help you and guide you through that process. And we're welcome anybody that wants to come and join.
I know you still need the employees, but maybe some out there, there's some volunteers in Boulder City
Oh,
that
we'll take anybody.
might just love to come help you. So that's why I was asking that question.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Yielding? Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying the volunteers. Do you need security there? That seems like that's an important paid position.
Ideally, we would. The reason it's not being listed right now is I'm prioritizing the things that are most critical as part of our statutory obligations. And first and foremost among those are care of the collections, education of lifelong learning, and health and safety of our guests, primarily through the maintenance of the railroad equipment that we operate. And so health safety is always going to be the first and foremost, and secondary, we've made an obligation to the people of Nevada to care for these unique pieces of our historical collection forever and ever, and we need to actually be able to do that.
And will you collaborate with the Hoover Dam Hotel and the Chamber at all?
Oh, we regularly do, yes.
Okay. Also, this is a really good bipartisan BDR if it does go through, if we decide that's the route we want to take. So I think that that's a plus. And we were talking about this earlier, how we're looked at as a tourism town, but there's a lot of education that comes here. And I could just see, the kids, like you said, coming from all over, being educated on the history of trains and also enjoying the tourism while they're here. So there's that balance. I would say, though, think about security as well, if you're going to go for the gusto.
Yeah, it's on our 5 to 10 year plan. We do have security listed on that. It's there. We've also looked at private contracting, but ironically, private contracting costs more than actually hiring a state employee. So,
Thank you.
yes.
Dr. McMahon, we're thankful that you are in Boulder City, and we appreciate your professionalism, your passion about the history of the railroad and how it relates to the building of the dam and therefore the building of Boulder City and the educational opportunities that are there. As I read some of these descriptions, you wrote, without this position, and this is relevant to several of them, the museum remains ineligible for most federal and private grants, placing all financial burdens on the state for the museum's operating and programming costs. And the state is stretched pretty thin for financing. We all appreciate that fact. So I think that just lends itself to the importance of these positions. I think we need to acknowledge that in our conversation, that because one of the first things I was thinking in my mind was, what about grants and what about federal funding? And if we don't have the positions that make us eligible, then not even an option. With some of the positions of the 5.5 that we will have, are we eligible for certain federal types of grants but not other types, or do we need these specific ones to be able to access all of them, if you will?
So right now, the majority of the positions the museum has are support positions, things like custodians, groundskeepers, those types of positions. I am the only guest service position currently. We will have a part-time position starting next Monday. But otherwise, I am the only guest service position that's full-time. I am the only educator that's full-time. Most of these grants require that you have an individual person dedicated to education or an individual person specifically full-time dedicated to collection, preservation, and management. We currently lack that, and so we're ineligible for most of the positions as it currently, or grants as it currently stands.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate you taking the time to even consider this. We're very happy to call Boulder City home.
Appreciate it. That brings us to our attorney and potentially our lobbyist.
Yes, if you'd like, Mayor and Council, I could invite Warren Hardy up to kind of explain why the bill might be an advantage for funding for the positions.
Thank you, Brittany. Mayor, members of the council, Warren Hardy with Warren Hardy Strategies. Again, thanking you for the opportunity to again represent Boulder City this session. there were some good questions at the beginning, and I'm not advocating for or against this proposal. I will go fight for everything I'm worth for whatever you decide you want to advocate for. But there's a good reason. There were some questions that led me to believe that maybe the council was thinking this is a little bit redundant, that we're going to go for the governor's budget, so why are we doing a BDR as well? And here's what I would say to that. And the reason I think if you are serious about this, a BDR request is a good idea. Certainly Mayor Hardy understands this as well as anybody, but the governor's budget is based on a recommendation that's going to be made by the Economic Forum in November 15th. That's what he has, that's the number he's statutorily obligated to build the budget on. And he will do that. At the beginning of this year, most of the conversations and really the data made it look like we're going to have a very tough fiscal year in 2026 or the 27 session. That is looking up considerably. There's a weird dynamic going on in Southern Nevada where if you talk to people on the street and even analysts, it looks like things are horrible, but what's actually happening on the street is not that horrible. The Pew fiscal report even listed Nevada as one of the top states in the country in terms of economic recovery. Why that's important to this issue is the governor will build a budget in November, and that's the first forecast that the legislature is required to build its budget on. So he will build a budget based on that. Then in May, they will do a second report. The Economic Forum will do a second report. And that is either going to be less than or more than the November report. Last interim, it was less than. There's every indication to believe this time it will be more than. That means we will have what we traditionally call one-shot money, money that is in excess of what the governor has proposed in his budget. So if the governor declines to include this in his budget because the money is just not there, there is a good possibility the money will be there by the end of session, and having a bill draft will put you in a really good position to be able to say, okay, we requested this in the budget couldn't accommodate it, now there's additional money, please move this to the front of the line. So I just wanted to give you, that's a long, convoluted way of saying, this is really not redundant, this would probably give you potentially 2 bites of the apple, and we will do everything we can between now and November to convince the governor to include this in his budget, including the equity arguments with the Northern Nevada Museum. That will be job one. We'll do everything we can. But if it doesn't end up in the governor's budget, this potentially gives us another bite of the apple in May when the legislature looks at those new numbers and potentially has additional money to spend. That's all I wanted to say.
Possibly a little bit naive about the process. So if it gets put in the governor's budget, it doesn't mean the next year it could be, or whatever the next budget, right? Or does that mean, yes, that's a position, it stays there and we're good?
So thank you, Your Honor, Warren Hardy, for the record. Getting in the governor's budget does not mean it will become law. The governor is constitutionally required to provide a budget. There's a growing sentiment in the legislature that goes back to Senator Hardy and I's service that the legislature ought to prepare its own budget. So that the legislature looks at the governor's budget as a suggestion, as a list of his priorities. That really essentially is a third bite of the apple for us, because if it's not included in the budget, we still have an opportunity during the regular budget cycle to push this priority. So no, that's a good start. If it's in the governor's budget, that gives us a story to tell, and that helps a lot. And that'll be our first priority.
So if the bill went through and passed, how long would these positions be guaranteed, or is there no guarantee past the original time, like however long that is?
That's a very good question, because really what we're talking about in that gap funding that is more in May than it does in November is traditionally called one-shot money, which we don't usually commit to ongoing expenses, which is another reason to have it included in the governor's budget if possible, because if it's included in the governor's budget, it will be viewed as an ongoing expense. So this really creates a number of bites of the apple for us, and if this is a priority for the city, gives us the strongest opportunity to actually see this through. But we would have to push for it in that second cycle as an ongoing expense, because we don't want, obviously, to fund these positions for one biennium. But
Right.
we've got a good story to tell in that regard with regard to parity with Northern Nevada.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Cookie.
Why don't we ask for more employees? It seems like if Reno gets more employees than we do, why not ask for the same amount of employees?
It's my understanding that that is what was in the budget request. The request that's being submitted to the governor through the director is for more employees.
Okay, so he feels that's adequate for
It's-
Boulder City?
I
Okay,
don't want to speak for him, but it's never adequate.
I know.
But it's, you know, you get as much as you can get.
But because it's already been asked, that way we can't increase it.
There's very, and I should let the director speak to that, but the governor usually gives very specific direction about what the budget's supposed to look like. I can tell you, knowing our director, that he is going to advocate strongly for what he believes. I don't want to
Okay.
say regardless of what the governor says, but the governor's going to be aware of what our needs are, regardless of what the parameters are.
Thank you.
Are the BDRs put like in buckets, entertainment or different, like what would his chances be? Is it just him against every dollar that's out there? Or is there budget, buckets for each activity?
That depends on the legislative priorities. I can tell you that when we looked in 2009, when we were doing the massive budget cuts in the state, there were massive cuts proposed by then Governor Gibbons to our museum system, which the legislature pushed back on aggressively. So each legislative session and cycle, the priorities change. But there are generally global conversations about what are we going to do for mental health? What are we going to do for education? What are we going to do for culture and the state museums? We never get around to the culture and state museums conversation unless there's a surplus. And I am cautiously optimistic that we're going to be facing a surplus this time because of the way economic conditions are trending. Not a big one, but enough to be able to have the conversation. And I think those numbers will look better by November, when the governor is right down to what he has to, build his budget on. So the timing is potentially good.
Well, I know the governor loves Boulder City.
As
So
he should.
That's yet another check. And he'll be here at the grand opening, I think, so, thank you.
And I will tell you, based on my conversations, the governor does understand the need for parity between northern and southern Nevada.
Yes.
That's our strongest case on this, is that you built this beautiful facility. We expect that your anticipation is that it's going to be worthy, the staffing is going to be worthy of the building, independent of all the things that it does for Boulder City, which we will point out. This is for the state of Nevada.
Yeah.
And that puts us in a strong position.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So we have, thank you, Warren. So we have that presentation that we could have as a BDR if the council so chose. Is there any other BDR that staff or anyone else is entertaining?
Staff does not have any additional suggestions, but the council is welcome to discuss any other opportunities, and we can look at those.
Any other desires?
I don't know if this would be appropriate or not, but the hotel, they had the budget cut, and I don't know if they go into BDRs or how that works, but is that something that could be considered as well?
For the Boulder Dam Hotel?
The historic hotel, yes.
Well, the city can always seek state funding for different things. The state hotel, the Boulder Dam Hotel, I don't believe has historically received ever any state funding. The city does provide funding to the hotel
Okay, so
here as well.
that route would be to look for more grants or something like that for the hotel,
Yeah,
rather than a BDR.
I don't believe because it's not a state
It's not-
facility,
yeah,
I
it's
don't
not
believe it's
state.
received any funding.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, hearing what I'm hearing, you know, and if you go by the theory, if you build it, they will come. So we could hope, right? We've built it, it's beautiful. It says state on it. I mean, we can't say it any more simply than this is a state museum. We could hope that it will come and that they will come. I know the people will come and I know the interest will come in it. So it seems to me that this would be something good for us to ask for. I mean, I'd love to see that not just be a vacant, non-utilized, beautiful facility. I mean, it already is an asset on the corner there. It's beautiful. You guys have worked so hard at getting this to be a reality. I really feel like we should get behind it to make it a functioning reality at the level that it should be functioning.
Is that a motion to do a BDR?
I'd like to make a motion.
Sure, a motion.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you. Brings us to public comment. This can be on any subject up to 3 minutes.
Adam Schulteis. And after seeing that presentation, the company, I think it was FCS or PFC, anyway, about the utility increases, the golf water use was eye-opening. It was astronomical. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. And we're paying for part of that. So I did a little studying. I did this before. 88% of small towns in America have 2 golf courses, but most of these towns are not in the Southwest. They're just not in the Southwest. I hear from one assembly member to cut. That's what SNWA is saying, of course. But the problem of it is, let's take our 2 golf courses and make them desert. I mean, it's an easy fix. Scottsdale, Arizona has a number of them, and Scottsdale, Arizona is a mecca for golfers all across the country, if not the world. This just makes logical sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, Eric King, longtime resident. Thank you all. Wanted to make a hopefully cogent appeal to you on the ecotourism aspects of where it seems there's a lot of attention paid right now on tourism. How do we make that work? Capacity exists in hotel, so forth, things like that. Very sensible conversation. And so having the golf courses, there is potential there to do more, I guess you could call it innovative strategies as to how to make those golf courses work fiscally in terms of water budget and so forth. And I'll just throw out some numbers here. I mentioned the airport runoff. Again, I'm going back to runoff because everybody wants to kind of become water Nazis, I think, over the next few years because of, you know, whatever you want to call that. But people are going to get very conservative probably in their addressing of water, and yet every municipality I'm aware of, certainly in Southern Nevada, ignores storm runoff as a potential resource. So I'd like to advocate for that, and in particular with trees. I'll just keep it in numbers of trees, that the airport runoff alone, if you take those 530 acres or so, that'd be 3,900 trees, take mesquites for instance, every year that could be somewhere put on, say, Clark County land. you guys have a very large township. If you took the city hardscape, that is 112,000 trees per year just for stormwater runoff that currently goes as fast as possible to Lake Mead, where 600,000 and 60,000, put them together, 660,000 acre feet of water gets burned off every year in Lake Mead. Used to be 880,000. Now it's smaller surface footprint, so less burns off. Still, it's a lot of water. And if you take the total township, one of the largest, maybe the largest in Nevada, I think you guys have, 745,000 trees for one annual rainfall falling on your land. It's an enormous amount of trees. That's 6 times what exists in the valley over the hill here. That's 1 year of stormwater runoff. So I was asked to find some water a while ago. It keeps falling out of the sky, more here than most places in southern Nevada because of your elevation, and your population doesn't use much of it at all. So thank you for hearing me on that. Ecotourism could bring you a lot of money.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Good evening again, Mayor, Council, staff, ladies and gentlemen left. Brandon Smith for the record. I just wanted to do a quick shout out to Gary and his team for his relentless pursuit of keeping our lights on for all of Boulder City. Circling back to agenda item 11, it's a big pill to swallow, 5% year over year over year. I think maybe perhaps a more reasonable way of looking at those increases might be that I think we should just, concede to the fact that nothing's getting cheaper. Parts, water, electricity. It would be stupendous if if our rates could actually go down, which I'm pretty sure that you guys have already nominated that can't happen. But I think the struggle here is for our fragile community members, where 15% could potentially break them. And I think circling back to this tiered status that we should be implementing in a much more controlled and aggressive manner, where our smallest users are getting charged the least, whereas our biggest users are getting charged the most. It's just like taxes. You make your money, you got to pay your taxes. You have a bigger home, you got to pay more. I think that's reasonable, and I think it's something that you guys really need to focus on going forward to protect our more fragile community members from having to sit through summers without air conditioning, winters without heat. It's really important. I also think that in the big scheme of things, I would like to see this council recognizing the community's input a little more. I would also wish this council would stop trying to silence the community